Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody's been thawed out. Nobody has any burst pipes this morning. But today is a special called workshop meeting of the Commissioners Court of Hood County, Texas. Today being February the 22nd, 2021, it's 9 a.m. We're in the Century Jury Room at 1200 West Pearl Street in Granbury, Texas. And the purpose of this meeting, of course, is to address the Emergency Services District known as the ESD. And this is an information meeting only, and no actions will be taken. This meeting will be to present challenges in any department and answer any questions that anybody has in the county, and let the various fire departments. Here we got one thing I like to say here at the beginning. We have 9 of the best volunteer fire departments anywhere, not only in the state of Texas, but I would say in the United States. And they do an exemplary job, and I think everybody would agree with that. So I want to congratulate all of them, and they always work at any time, even during this disaster that we had. They were out fighting fires and doing everything else from chopping wood and delivering wood. So I can't say enough about these brave guys here, I tell you that. So my hat's off to each and every one of them. We have today Mr. Ken Campbell from Fort Worth.
No, from Austin, sir.
Austin. Oh, you should have let me go ahead and make the mistake about Fort Worth. But
well, I'm actually from BK.
Okay. Well, at least that's better than saying you're from Dallas. But Mr. Campbell is here, and he's filed a petition on behalf of De Cordova. So I'm going to let him go ahead and start this meeting off and let him kind of make an opening position. And then everybody else, we'll just kind of see how it goes. Everybody will get an opportunity to ask questions and make statements of their own. So, Mr. Campbell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Judge. Is it all right?
Sure, sure.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ken Campbell. I'm an attorney from Austin, which everybody knows from here. I live in the East School District, Westlake High School. But just so you know, my background is I'm a prosecutor for cities and counties. I'm also assistant chief of Seabar Fire Department, which is Travis County Emergency Services District number 10. And I've been a volunteer committee firefighter for 30 years now. I'm also a lieutenant at Westlake Fire Department, Travis County ESD number 9. And I'm a commissioner of Travis County ESD number 10. And have been for about 18 years. So I know this, and I'm one of the few attorneys in the state of Texas. I hope this doesn't sound grandiose, but this is what I do. Is I consult with cities, counties, on the creation of ESDs, on county fire departments, county emergency medical services. I defend you guys when you get sued, if you have to get my ass. So I do this from all angles, and I've been doing this for a long time. This is probably not my 100th meeting where I've come to a county somewhere to talk about emergency services districts. I'm here today. You must know that I'm very pro ESD. I believe in them very strong. We have 16 in Travis County. We really have about 12 actual ESDs. We have overlay ESDs for EMS services, and I'll explain how that works a little bit. But I represent literally ESDs from Mauriceville way in East Texas, right up to Sabine, all the way to El Paso, all the way up to Reynolds County, Potter County, Randall County, all the way down to the valley. I've been doing this for about 30 years. So I'm here to answer your questions. I know this is brand new to a lot of you. Some of you know about ESD, some of you don't. And, you know, everybody has questions, so, and I don't mean to turn my back on you, Commissioner.
No, that's all right. We got.
So I'm here to just answer questions, talk about it, tell you what it's about. The judge suggested that maybe I make a little opening statement, and what I'd like to do is kind of just talk about what an ESD is, what it does, what it doesn't do. There is good and bad about everything. I, again, think of these things in sliced bread. I think it would be perfect for Hood County. I think y'all are learning about this, so y'all need to know, and you need to think about how you actually want to do this if you do want to do this at some point. Like I said, we have 12 ESDs in Travis County. If I had it to start over again, our first one was formed in 1961, which is ESD 9, when I'm a lieutenant. We're a full-time combination fire department. We're mainly paid staff, minimum format engine companies. All of us in Travis County, we have no jurisdictional boundaries in Travis County anymore. because basically we just send the closest appropriate available unit. So we could fight a fire in Austin, and we would have all county assets. We'd have ladder 302, we'd have engine 902, engine 901, engine 1002, depending on where it is. And maybe an Austin battalion chief would wander over and take command to see what's going on. Conversely, they could fight one in Rolling River, Westlake, Austin could, and our battalion chief could wander. So that's not to say that that's where we're going to be in the next 2 weeks, or even 2 months, or even 2 years, but we've been doing it since, like I said, 61. And if I had it to do over again, I would probably have a lot less ESDs. But there are some geographical issues that we have to deal with. The main ones are is that we've got I-35 running north-south right down the middle. And then we've got the Colorado River, Lake Travis, Lake Austin, out east-west right down the middle. So the far northwest area, northwest of Lake Travis, the Jonestown, Waterville Vista area, you're all familiar with that. That would probably be one. You can't even get there. There's no bridges. We can't get there without having to drive through Williamson County to get there, or Vernon County for that matter. In the southwest where we're at, we've got 8, 9, 10, and 5, and 3. Oak Hill, Seabar, Pedernales, Westlake, and Manchac. So those things would be anything to you. And that would probably be one you'll see if I had to do over again. But again, it started long before, well, frankly, I was even born. But then in the southeast, we've got one, well, Travis County Fire Rescue, which is ESD 11, that has an overlay ESD of ESD 15 for EMS services. And then in the northeast, we have basically Pflugerville and Manor. And then a little area called New Sweetie, which is in northeast Travis County, but it's mainly covered by Elgin, which is out of Bastrop County. So that's kind of how we're configured. I'd be more than happy to talk about Williamson County or Hayes County, a county that may be more comparable to your county. Nobody likes to hear anybody from Austin, but I've been all over the state, and I know how they're set up, and they're all over Central Texas. They're up in the Panhandle. Y'all are really not the first. You've got Parker County ESCs 1 through 6 here, or 7, actually 8 now. So you've got Parker County pretty much ESC'd up at this point, except for the city of Rutherford. You've got Johnson County, which has got 1 ESC. You've got let's see, going out to Hill County ESD 1 and Hill County ESD 2. 1 provides fire, 2 provides the EMS services. And so what we're doing here is basically we're creating a political subdivision of the state of Texas, just like the county, just like the school district, just like the city of Granbury or New Hampshire. Okay, so it is a political subdivision. It has to follow all the rules of a political subdivision, from open meetings to truth and taxation. It has a 5-member governing body called the Board of Emergency Services Commissioners. They would be appointed by the 5 commissioners here, and they have to be a resident of the state of Texas. They have to be 18 years of age, and they have to be either a property owner or a registered voter in the district that they serve. So theoretically, and this has actually happened down in Wilson County, which is just sort of east of Bear County. It's Livernia, Forestville, those areas. They have 1 commissioner on that board who happens to be the biggest landowner, even though he technically lives in Katy, but he's on that board because he's a property owner. So you don't necessarily have to be a resident of the district per se. You have to be either a registered voter or a property owner to be on the board. You have to be a reservation resident of Texas. Those people are appointed by the Commissioners Court. They're appointed for 2-year terms. The court cannot unappoint them because they are just like any other county officer. They can be removed from office for drunkenness and all the things that are in the statute by going to district court and that kind of stuff. They have 2-year terms. They generally start on January 1, and then will end on December 31, 2 years later. Now, what that means is that the people who elect those commissioners are the 5 people up here, instead of the whole electorate. There are a number of ESDs that have elected commissioners. Just to give you some background on what an ESD is, it was originally created in Texas back in 1948 as a rural fire prevention district. And before I go too far down this road, I want to point out, please raise your hand if you have a question, if I'm going in the wrong direction, if you don't want to hear it. But let's go ahead and interrupt now, and let's have to keep you back on track.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, Commissioner Andrews isn't here, but one of the questions he had for me was the appointment of the board. So, when their term is up in 2 years, the new commissioner or the extension of that board member, I guess, they're appointed by the Boone County Commissioners?
Correct. And it'll be, just so you know, let's say we go to an election, we create an ESD here. The Commissioners Court would appoint 5 people to be on that board, and they would all have the same term that ends on December 31st of that year's created. So if, let's just say we win in May, which we know it's not going to happen, but it would be created before July 1st, which means it gets taxed this year, okay? Because it said its taxes in September, October. So it gets taxed this year, start receiving money in 2022. If we're looking at November or later, which is what we're obviously looking at now, that district is not going to receive any funds until 2023 or later. So that means you've got to continue to do what you're doing for a little while longer, whether it's county support or city support or just what you're doing, and obviously donations. But those 5 people are appointed, they would go to that December 31st timeline, and then these commissioners, and what usually happens is the Commissioners Court appoints the same 5 people. I mean, it's hard to find people to run for things, let alone to volunteer for things, as we all know. But they probably appoint the same 5 for that, 6-month interim. And in this case, if we go in November, it'd be, basically a month and a half control. And then they would appoint them, and they would stagger them from that point. They would pick 3 who would go 2 years, and 2 that would go 1 year. And after that, it's staggered every year, 2 or 3 are appointed by the Commissioners Court. Generally speaking, all county and all government officials under the Constitution in Texas continue to hold their office until their successor is, quote, appointed and qualified, close quote. So what that means is, so that way we don't have lame ducks, we don't lose the form. You can resign all you want. You're still on that board until your successor is appointed and qualified. And in our case, for the appointed commissioners, that would be they get appointed, and then they take their statement of office and their oath of office. Now they're qualified. That's when your term would end if you had resigned or if you were not reappointed. That way we never have a gap. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your entire question, but that would be staggered after that. They are the governing body. They are a separate political subdivision from the county and anybody else. Not to say that they would be combative, everybody's got their own road to hoe, so they would be in charge of emergency services depending on the petition. And with our petition, I do represent DCPD Act, and with our petition, we're only doing fire services at this point. So it would be fire and first responder. That leaves the county free to do what they want to do with EMS, and we can create an EMS to deal with the whole county later on, if that's what we want to do. So the whole point is that's left open at this point, so we'd be limited to only that provision of services, which is a pretty broad provision of services, but it's typically what your municipal fire department does, if you're, with the exception, maybe the first responder. But I think every major department, I think almost every department in Texas now does first responder. There are a number of rural ones that do not do first responder, although they're the ones who probably should be doing first responder. So the point is that they would be in charge of those services. They would have their own tax base. It is a 10-cent constitutionally limited tax rate. 10 cents per $100 valuation, so you can do the math real quick. If you have a $100,000 house, you would pay $100 a year in taxes. Okay, if it's at 10 cents, and I will tell you right now, we all might as well assume it's going to be at 10 cents, not because that's what the commissioners are going to do, but because those who are against it are going to go to the worst case scenario, correct? I'll tell you a little bit about myself again. I've been lobbying for about 10 years, so I'm really sinking myself down with Austin and lobbying and all this stuff. But I went around, I lobbied for terms for horse racing, and I went around with a Baptist minister, a Pentecostal, a Presbyterian minister, and a Methodist minister, and we debated, we all agreed that the one thing we wouldn't talk about, because I'm a Baptist from Lubbock, Texas, the one thing we would not talk about is whether or not gambling is a sin. Because they win. I agree with them. If you think it's a sin, it's a sin. So what I'm getting at here is we're talking about a sin here. We're talking about 10 cents in additional taxes on your citizens. If the Commissioners Court approves the petitions that have been submitted by Toller and Acton at this point, they're not voting for a tax increase. They're not voting to increase anybody's taxes. They're simply allowing the voters of that defined area to decide whether or not they want to enhance their services to increase taxes. And it doesn't have to be 10 cents. We're all dealing with what's called SB 2. So if you don't know what that is, that's the last legislative session. It limited most political subdivisions' ability to increase taxes without going to a mandatory, what we now call a voter approval rate election. It used to be called a rollback election, and instead of 8%, it's now 3.5%. So that puts a lot of limit on things. And if you form an ESD and you think you need 5 cents, I'll just tell you that I advise go to 6 or 7. You can always back off. But you are a political subdivision, and you have to have reserves built up. So use that extra money to build up your reserves at a time. most people, including controllers, say most government entities should have at least 25% reserves available. And what that means is 25% of your annual budget. We try to maintain 50%. I have ESDs on the coast where it could all be in the bottom of the Gulf tomorrow after the next hurricane, and they've got 500% reserves. Okay, and that's because they could lose everything, including their tax base. You know, New Orleans is still not come back because their tax base is still at the bottom of the Gulf, a big chunk of it. So it just depends, but that's one of the things we would want to do. Again, they're also crystal balling a little bit because we would have needs of the 1 or the 2 or the 5 or whatever, how many volunteer fire departments are in there, trying to help them out. The ESD generally, and if I'm the attorney, they would not be looking at, you know, I want a new engine, I want to do this, I want to do that, because I'm a firefighter, I love big, red, shiny things, or I wouldn't do it, okay? But the bottom line is we got to figure out who's voting slowly first. Where do we need tenders? Where do we need new engines? Where do we need Class A pumpers? How can we affect the ISO rating? And just for those of you who don't know what the ISO rating is, that's what your insurance company does, and that's how they determine what they charge you for your fire and casualty. All right? And they rate fire departments, and we're the only political subdivision that is rated by anybody, and it actually can give money back to our taxpayers. And I'll tell you how that works in a minute, but it's from 1 to 10. 1 being quote the best, 10 being no fire department at all, 9 being basically something that throws water at something red. Okay? How many what's y'all's ISO? 4 or 9? 4 or 9. So that means that they've got 4, which is pretty good, and then a 9 where they don't have hydrants or water supplies. So they can go to ISO, which I think they'll have a process of doing, if I remember correctly, try and get an 8D or some lower rate by using the tanker shuttles, what we call tenders now. So what about total? What are you going on?
6-9.
6-9? Indian, I'm sorry. What are you going on? 6-9?
We think we're 3-6.
3-6.
It's either 3-6 or 3-4.
What about y'all? I don't know for something. Okay. Well, my point is, and you can't promise this to the taxpayers, but that's what happens is that we would work to improve the services we deliver. Obviously, 50% of the ISO rating is basically water supply. There's not a lot we can do about that. Okay, it's either there or it's not. It's harder for rural areas and counties than for cities to manage that. But it's communications, it's the type of equipment. So we would look at that to aim to lower the amount of insurance premium that you pay. I'm not saying it's a straight 5%, and I'm not saying it goes down to 0 after 10, but going from a 10 to a 9 would probably get 10% off of what you pay on homeowners insurance. Going from a 9 to a 6 would probably get you down about 30% off. After that, it's gradual. We have to be a 2. We're going to a 1 in my department. My other department's a 2. Austin's a 2. And so we've got, because we all have joint dispatching, we all go through Austin Fire Department, and we work together to get everybody what they need. So we're all heading in that direction. Now, you can't promise the taxpayers, because again, water supply is a big chunk of it, but you can work on communications, you can work on assets, you're working on all the other stuff that ISO looks at. ISO doesn't really care about you or anybody else. They care about their losses, so losses also figure into that. So you have a big barn burn, your ISO may be affected, probably not. But that's another thing they look at is your loss history. So,
I have a question for you regarding the insurance part of it. It's always been my understanding that maybe 10% of your total premium on your insurance is going to be your fire and casualty portion. So when you're talking about a 10% or 30% discount, is that not 10 or 30% off of the 10% that you pay on your fire and casualty?
And ISO is a complicated formula, and it's a complicated thing. And it also depends. Not all insurance companies use ISO. I'm on State Farm because my dad was a State Farm insurance agent. They don't use ISO rating. They use their own, what they call fire protection classification.
Yeah,
and they say that they figure in your law enforcement and all this other stuff. They don't. And they also say that they do better adjusting. I don't know. I've never had to rank adjustment from an insurance company, so I don't know. But the bottom line is yes, it will go down more than just 10% of your total amount. Mine did, even though I was on State Farm. But what we did, we went from a 6.9, we went to a 3, and we put about $300 a year into my taxpayer's pocket and decreased insurance, which our average taxpayer at the time paid about $250 a year, so we literally put $50 in their pocket. And that's what we were aiming for, and that's what we're trying to do. By going to a 1, we've done a little bit better over time, and that's every year. So I can't tell you exactly how it's going to work, which is why I don't want to talk about it too much. And I don't think y'all, if you're for this or are going for that, you mentioned that you're going to try. That's one of the things you're going to work toward. But that, that's kind of out of your hands, the water supply, and then, of course, the state fire marshal gets involved, and then, of course, the insurance company gets involved. But that's what all my clients are doing. I represent about 250 ESDs throughout the state of Texas. That's what we aim for. Really, we aim for better service, enhanced service more than anything else. And having trucks, does that necessarily enhance service? No. Because having an ESD is not going to change business. It's not going to get me across the Colorado River. Okay, it's not going to get me across the railroad track. But if I have better equipment for my volunteers, that's great. And that's one of the things we work really hard at, because the PPE that they wear costs $5,000 to $10,000 a piece. Once you get into the SCBAs, the bunker gear, everything they have to have. Well, if you're a volunteer, the least we can do is give you the best equipment possible. If you're giving up your time, and have a volunteer. So the bottom line is that that's what we're going to try to do, is enhance the service we have. I know that Boone County, I've talked to Jeff, I've talked to my client, obviously. I've talked to different people, and y'all do, as the judge said, y'all do an excellent job. The county does an excellent job. Okay, so this is not a shot at the county, and or even just we want more money. Because one thing that I've told my clients here today is that, look, this is not an ATM machine. This is not daddy hitting the lottery. Okay, this is a political subdivision. We're going to figure out what we need to do and how we need to do it and what that's going to cost and what it's going to take to get us there. And one thing that we've all done, which I don't know where y'all are going to be on this at some point, but you will be there at some point because volunteerism is severely down, is you're going to have to go to paid staff at some point. Maybe during the day, maybe 24/7. We started out during the day, 7 to 7, with 1 guy and 2 guys, and now we're 24/7. We do 48, 96 shifts. So, and we have to, because we just don't have the volunteers anymore. And I can't explain why, but we don't. We still have a very dedicated cadre of those, but y'all are out here doing it today. So what we're talking about is how can we enhance the service that we already have? Yes, sir.
Quick question, of the ESDs that you've set up over this time, how many of them have slipped from being volunteer to combination paid?
They don't slip. It's almost a natural progression, honestly. It's a natural progression, and make sure I answer your question, but I want to back up first, is that it's almost a natural progression where you start with a VFD, maybe getting county money, maybe getting city money, maybe just making it on bake sales, okay? Then they create the CSD fund, and then they go forward, and it eventually ends up the volunteer departments are absorbed into the ESD. Now, that may never happen here. There are tons that hadn't happened in Travis County, and we've absorbed everybody, because 1, there's no point in trying to find another board, 2. All right, 2, we kept ours at C-Bar and ESD 10 until 2015. Our volunteers. I was on the volunteer, I wasn't on the volunteer board because I was a commissioner, but I was a volunteer line officer. We finally absorbed it because we'd gone to paid staff, and it's not that we absorbed it necessarily, it's just that we couldn't find 7 people to fill the other board, and 7 volunteers. So we brought when the paid staff wasn't a volunteer fire department, so we brought them in. It's kind of a natural progression. It depends on, local results may vary, but it's not something that is guaranteed to happen. And I have clients that have Limestone County, all around here that will probably never have paid staff. They're looking very hard at trying to do at least 1 person to get the truck there for the volunteers to need. All right, but the bottom line is it's not necessarily a natural. It is sort of a natural progression, but the bottom line is that it really depends on what y'all's needs and wants are. Did I answer your question?
How many of those districts ultimately?
I probably got about 40% of my ESD run now. Have absorbed the volunteer. We still have volunteers. I volunteer for Westlake. I volunteer for C-Bar. We have a volunteer group, and we train them just like the paid staff, and everybody's expected to be the same. If you're a lieutenant when you're a volunteer paid. But it's not something that's going to make the volunteers go away, because I think y'all, especially, are going to need it longer. Hays County has the same thing. My oldest son, is a volunteer with South Hays, which is all around San Marcos, and they're an all-volunteer fire department except for the chief and 2 battalion chiefs, 2 division chiefs that sort of coordinate the whole thing. They fortunately got a good base with Texas State, almost with Texas State University, where they get a lot of their volunteers from. So it's not something that's going to eliminate your volunteers, if that's something you're worried about. Will it happen automatically? No, that is a decision-making process that everybody goes through as to how they're going to do that.
Can I speak to that a little bit? Here's my thought. I may be wrong, but you could probably tell me. I think that the ones that transition to paid departments or ESD departments is because of the call volume. So as their call volume increases, as their growth happens, you can't run a volunteer department that's making 5,000 a year. You can't. So I think that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, and that's what we did, obviously. During the day, we had, when I first started 30 years ago, we had 10 people. And we're a small district, we're the smallest district in Travis County. We're 10 square miles, about the size of the city box. And we, had plenty of people during the day. And we had too many people at night. All right? You could have a party for a back day and have 25 people trying to your house. All right? So it changed. More people would move into the neighborhood. They were less interested in volunteering. I coached my kids' baseball teams, football teams, did this, practiced law, whatever else I was doing with my church. And that was just what you did in the community. But the new people move in, and they don't even think about that. They already think they're thieves. So we had a real problem with volunteers. And so that's when we started having the daytime staffing, just to know that we could get a truck there. And I'm sorry, I'll get to you next, but just jump in.
My question is, on this tax increase, what does that do to the lower income areas?
What do you mean by the lower income areas?
So the lower income areas, people that doesn't make a lot of money, pay
Right.
2% on the 100.
Yeah.
What does that do to that area?
Well, I don't know that it does anything. We were one of the poorest areas in Travis County. Not to say that we're getting better, but we are. We're in an area that's growing right now. It's going to increase your taxes. That's why I was talking about the parental horse races. We're talking about sin here. If you don't believe in taxes, you don't believe in this. Bottom line. And I can't talk you out of it, and I won't argue with you about it, because we're talking whether or not gambling's a sin at this point. What we're talking about is especially you who are in the volunteer fire departments out there, you need to go sell why do you even need this. And it's not going to be sold on, I want a new shiny red fire truck. It's going to be sold on what we're going to do to enhance your services. It will be the same 10 cents for everybody, whether you're a renter, because the landlords pass it on. And so if you have a $100,000 house, you'll pay $100 a year. If you have an $80,000 house, you'll pay $80 a year. And, you will see your donations go down too as well, because people are now donating. I don't know how y'all are, but we had about 10 people that donated to us that we could count on. And then we get maybe another 100 that, on the off chance that they might be able to do that, or might want to make a donation at some point. Yeah, we've stopped doing fundraisers. We don't do them anymore. We're doing okay now. But the bottom line is you're going to see that revenue source, unless you work it hard, go down, because now everybody's getting taxed instead of you just trying to rely on the county and those few donors in your area who will give some big money to help things out. So we have to follow that further, or did I answer your question? Yes, sir.
Kind of wanted to comment about what you're talking about from volunteer to combo to paid. Excuse me. Work around the state, a lot of departments have gone ESD, have moved, done the combo, and eventually gone to paid and all that stuff. Especially down around the Harris County, Montgomery County and all that, it's really, really popular. It is a very slow process. Katie still runs volunteer as well as paid staff. It's a slow process because you got to remember, as you transition over to getting paid to be a firefighter, you also have to transition into TCFP.
Right.
So that is a slow process. You get a whole new set of standards that come versus what a volunteer department has. It's, in my opinion, seeing around the state, a lot of them do really well. The ones that have a poor board do poorly. And I think that's where the strength really comes in. Is if you get a good board, get good people that are there and really want to see this through and looking at a 5, 10, 20-year plan, then it can be a very good program.
And speaking of someone who's been a volunteer for 30 years, 3 departments at one point, but now only 2. That's one of the things, and I'll be honest with you, the biggest problem we had with that transition were the volunteers. And I especially see this in more rural areas. There are fire departments out there, you probably know of some, that it's tin can use all that cool stuff? You betcha, all right? But the problem that I see, and it's happened in Parker County, it's happened in other counties around here, is you'll have it degenerate down to Ken Campbell, his wife, his brother-in-law, and his nephew. And they're running off anybody who's any smarter than they are in the fire service, and they're doing everything they can just to keep it to them, all right? That's gonna go away. And in fact, we had it happen in ESD 6, and we do have paid staff now in Parker County as well, but we still have a strong volunteer group. So do all the other ones in Parker County, and in Johnson County, and in Hill County. But usually, when you see the volunteer fire department go away, in my experience, it's either been just a consensus deal, we're here now. We're moving to the next step. Y'all come in, you're still volunteers for the ESD, nothing changes, the commission has no regulatory authority over you. But the second you get paid, even 1/10 dime or 1/10 second, you now gotta be a commissioned firefighter because you're doing it for government money. We did it for years, that's one reason we kept CBAR Volunteer Fire Department Inc. around, is we only hired commissioned firefighters, or we would hire you and send you to get your commission. But we did not want to hire just the volunteers. We did hire from our volunteer ranks, but then you lose your volunteer ranks because they all become paid, which also means they can't come to the full fire if they're working 8 to 5 and it comes out at 5:01, because you can't work and volunteer for the same job. It's just federal law. Okay? So there are a lot of issues that go into that. Those are issues that y'all will confront as your ESDs are formed and as your ESDs mature that may or may not happen. Harris County is a perfect example of where they still have strong volunteer departments. The ones that have gone away have gone away because they run 5,000 calls and they just can't get enough people. You know, again, we have plenty of folks at night around. When your house catches on fire at 3 o'clock, we won't lose your slack. Okay? So we have to put a pace in. And so that's one of the things, that's just sort of the dynamics that you have to put into it. That when you're running a lot of calls, like she said, then you're probably going to be getting to the pay staff soon. All right? But that would same thing's going to happen with Granbury. I don't know where y'all are, spiritually or metaphysically. I don't know how many volunteers under pay staff you have, if any. But y'all are going to be facing that deal. And again, one of the biggest issues is, well, how much money do we have? Because you're talking $30,000 to $40,000 between benefits and pay and everything, and probably more than that, plus just the gearing up costs to have it paid out. And you've got a limited amount of money, you just can't have paid out. You're going to have volunteers. You might get a paid chief to coordinate all this stuff and make sure everybody's got their training, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. I don't know much about the firefighting business, so I need, some of the questions this side. What positions would be paid positions? And you mentioned chief, you mentioned lieutenant, that's all I know right now. And then you got the firefighters that are on the ground, so, what does a fire station look like? What does it make of? And then, for our size of city, what does it look like as far as cost-wise for maintaining those average type positions?
And you're with Granbury, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're a little bit different because y'all can form a municipal fire department. I assume y'all have. Is that correct? I believe I've been told that. I don't know how many paid staff you have. Zero? Okay. And it may stay that way for forever, but you don't have to have paid people. You may have people who run it, the city manager, the assistant city manager, the public safety, whatever, who sort of oversee and assist with it. You don't have to have any paid people. You do normally have the fire service chief and assistant chief, man and deputy chief. You're going to have maybe captains, and our role captains are, when I started, captains were just the guys who were in charge of the trucks, and lieutenants were the guys who were in charge of the captains. And we assigned each truck a company of about 5 or 6 people. But where I'm from, and where most of y'all are familiar who are in the fire service, a captain is a ladder company officer, a lieutenant is an engine company officer. And so the two don't necessarily mix. And then you'll have the battalion chiefs depending on how many stations you have and things like that. But the city, and again, the city could, if it wanted to, create an ESD that includes the city's territorial limits. I think if the ESD is created around you, you would certainly want the ETJ covered. And then you might get money from the ESD to cover the ETJ. So that's something to think about. Now, whether you have to change anything, you don't. These guys don't have to change anything. You guys don't have to change anything. You can continue to do it the way you do it. The one thing that happens is that you now have 5 people that you go to, and you put your budget into their budget, and then they approve it, and they set a tax rate. So creating a daddy warbucks or an ATM. That's not how it works. And that's what happened in Parker County 6, for example, is they literally told us, hey, sit down, shut up, give us the money. We told them, ah. They went so far as to go around and put up flyers in all the convenience stores and the little gas stations and stuff. Don't call 911 if you have a fire, here's a $10-digit ring down. All right? That evolved into a family. Sometimes you do have to. I mean, most of the time that I've had to do that, 99.9% of the time, it's been because somebody's stealing money or somebody's not letting anybody else be on the fire department with them. Okay? Generally, it's a consensus situation. We're all aiming for the same goal. We all know what capital we're in. And we're all making sure that we're trying to provide the highest and best level of service for the least amount of money that's going to
But we're talking about an ESD or Denver against.
Correct.
Is that a city of Denver against? Is that considered?
No, it's separate from the city, just like the school district is separate from the city. The city would have no control over the fire department. Obviously, we would work with the Corps of Ed to see what they needed, but they're already counting on us to do that anyway. So the city doesn't necessarily have to be involved. In fact, there is no city in Travis County other than Austin that has a fire department. They all have ESDs. We've got 16 cities now in Travis County. So they're happy about that because that's one part of their budget they don't have to worry about it. And for most cities, right now, that are from your size up, it's going to be about 16 cents per $100 valuation to do what you're doing, the ESD.
The question is, it's the city of Decordova. So why doesn't the city of Decordova impose its taxes on the residents of Decordova against it?
And they could, but, and DCBE Acton also is larger than the city, so they have a service area, so that somebody's got to be able to contract and provide that money. That's the only other somebody who's going to be the county. Okay? The city of Decorah then could start, a 10-cent tax or add it. With SB 2, that would be almost impossible now. But add a 10-cent tax, go to a voter approval election or whatever, and then try to get it approved by the voters to increase their tax rate so they could have municipal fire department. The issue also is, though, is what do you do with all those areas that are historically covered by Acton or by whomever? How do you service them? Well, that leaves the county in the firefighting business, and then they don't want to be in the firefighting business. I'm sure they have other things to pay for besides that, and they would love to see that money rolled into the sheriff's department or indigent defense or one of many of the other unfunded mandates from the legislature they have every year. Same with y'all. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but yes, the Corps of Ed could do a municipal fire department, but then what do you do with all that area that's historically been covered by? We had it happen in Georgetown, for example, and Leander, Cedar Park. Leander and Cedar Park and Georgetown all became municipal, and Round Rock all became municipal fire departments. Well, that was fine, but the Constitution says that you can't give money away. So they could no longer respond outside of their city limits. They had historic service areas that were much bigger than their city limits. So the county was stuck in the firefighting business for a number of years. The county kept producing the money where Round Rock's getting $10,000 to cover another 500 square miles. And so what they did is they formed ESDs around those cities. And so we formed ESDs, and now we contract with Georgetown, Round Rock, and Cedar Park. And they have additional resources and funds with which to provide services. And more to the point, and y'all necessarily need to do this, I don't want to scare anybody, but they don't have fire codes. Well, we can do fire codes. So we can do fire codes that are the city's fire codes. So when the city annexes, it doesn't bring in a bunch of non-conforming uses anymore. It brings in stuff that's already sprinkled. It brings in stuff that's already compliant with the fire code. So they don't have to let it slide more to the point, make that taxpayer have to pay all that money to put that stuff in there. So it's a very good thing, but it's going to be very local. You guys are going to determine how you're going to do that.
Just since you hit on fire codes, one of the things is if a ESD does adopt a fire code, they need to have somebody to enforce it. The county
Yes.
cannot enforce their fire codes, the
Right.
city cannot do it. The ESD has to have a fire marshal who's got all the certifications, meet all the requirements, and do everything they're supposed to do for the fire code side of it. As far as fire investigation, the county can still do it.
Right.
That's not an issue. If they choose to let their certify the fire marshal's investigator, and he decides to do the investigations, he can do that as well. They can't hire a peace officer for the enforcement side of it.
We can't.
So there's certain things that the ESD, this is something for Hood County in general. Hood County has not been able to adopt the fire code countywide because of the size and the way the law is written and all that stuff.
Gotta be
Supposedly
250 or.
supposedly that's gonna change, and there's wording to remove that 250 requirement, but that's not gonna happen in this legislation because there's too much other stuff going on. But, like I said, having an ESD, if an ESD does form, they can do it. If you have a area of the county that is developing further and all that stuff, it's a good idea to adopt that fire code early, so you're getting all the stuff being built to that code.
And McDonald's and all those people that you're thinking about bringing in are gonna plop it down with the pipes and everything in it, even if they don't have the water supply. And I hate to say this, my church is one of these examples, it's the churches and the implemental debt plants that are gonna be pissed off about it. Because they're gonna have to put in sprinklers and stuff like that, and everything that's citizens around, and we all know what happened in the Midwest. But I wanna amplify what he's saying is, and I don't wanna go too far down the road about, all these new rules and regulations, because they may never come to be. But I have counties, for example, Upton County, Rains County, they have a lot of lakes, they have a lot of tourists coming in, they have a lot of developers who come up and throw a crap, and then sell it. And not put any sprinklers in or anything else, and then expect us to take care of it, all right? That county's too small to adopt a fire code. The county came to us and said, you guys adopt a fire code, please. And then we contracted with another city outside of the county to provide our fire marshals. In Spiceville, Texas, which is Vernon County, that's what we've done. We went and contracted with the city of Vernon, although they're way up in the north part, we're way out of the southwest part, to provide the fire marshals. Because you gotta have it. I had an ESD in Dallas County that 15 years ago adopted a fire code, and adopting a fire code is a very complicated matter. I think if I look, and I hate to say this, but if I look at Granbury's fire code, I bet you didn't adopt it. I mean, I can assure you that it's been done wrong, and it hadn't been done properly. And that's because most places just go, hey, we adopt the 2015 IC. They forget about all the appendices, they forget about the appeals process, they forget about water supply, they forget about all these other things, and they don't do it right. But my point is that this little ESD in Ellis County adopted the fire code, and when they called me up because they had a problem with the mass gathering event, the county already approved the mass gathering permit, but a bunch of these tents and stuff had to be sprinkled, and they had to have other things to comply. Well, I said, so who's your fire marshal? Well, I am. What qualifications do you have? Well, they elected me fire marshal. All right, well, okay, so we went to A&M, to Brighton, and we went and got a guy out there to go enforce our fire code for us. He's got a very good point, is that you can, and again, you're going to work together in Cook County, just like we have in Travis County, and to amplify further on that fire code thing without sitting here beating it to death, is that we have, what our statute says as far as fire code goes, if we can adopt the fire code, it has to be to national standards. Most of us adopt the international fire code, the latest version of that. We do our local amendments and things like that, do our ordinance. But what the law says as far as ESDs go is two things like he said. Just one, if the county has a fire marshal, and again, when we think about fire marshals without thinking about it, we forget that a fire marshal has two, in my mind, distinct different jobs. One is cause and origin investigation, the law enforcement side, the prosecution side. The other is the code enforcement side. You do not have to be a licensed peace officer to be a code enforcement officer. We can hold commissions at ESDs. But the point is that Travis County had a fire marshal before any of us adopted a fire code. So once we did, we could have our own fire marshal who do cause and origin, who doesn't necessarily have to be a commissioned peace officer, but it's a good thing to do. But once the county has it, we can't have a fire marshal anymore in that sense of the fire marshal's duties. All we have is now what we call them fire marshals shorthand. We call them code enforcement officers. And so that's what we do. If an ESD adopts a fire code before a county adopts a fire code, what the law says is if the county then subsequently comes in and adopts a fire code, the more stringent provision prevails. Okay? If an ESD adopts a fire code after the county adopts a fire code, which they can do, then we cannot enforce anything that conflicts with the fire code. So let me give you an example of that. Since we're all adopting essentially the same thing, right? ISO 2015, whatever it is, there's not going to be a conflict. There may be a conflict in the fees that each entity charges, but that's not a conflict. That is a jurisdictional, that is a fee issue. Okay? So what we've had in Travis County is we had 4 ESDs that adopted fire codes before the county adopted fire code, which only happened in the last 10 years. Well, actually, now 14. And then we've had 2 ESDs adopt fire code since, and we just adopted county fire code. The reason we did that was our county fire marshal's office doesn't have enough people to go out and do all the inspections and everything. So we went ahead and adopted and got our own inspection part of it. We rely on the county as a backstop. Same thing in Williamson County. Williamson County just adopted a fire code. Most of the ESDs in Williamson County had already adopted a fire code. We worked together, and in fact, what we did, and back then it doesn't matter now, but 5 years ago, we had, as ESDs, more powers under the fire code. These guys can only regulate 4 flags and above or commercial occupancy. That's it. We actually could regulate everything, including making you put sprinklers in your house. Okay? In Westlake, they did that. All right? But everybody's tearing down the house if you build $1 million, 20,000 square foot something. Okay? Well, that's basically a commercial occupancy. So they did that. The law has since changed. We have the same enforcement powers. The cities have the same enforcement powers. It's basically a 4 flags and above. That's it. For commercial occupancy. So we're all kind of on the same page. So what we did before this happened is we cross-deputized each other. So ESD 9 would also get the county fire marshals, and we have an interlocal agreement with the county fire marshal. They have an interlocal with us. So if we got out to that brand new, nightclub that didn't have any compliance with the fire code, well, the county fire marshal couldn't do anything about it, but we could. So that he would just walk out to his truck, take off his county fire marshal hat, put on his Westlake hat, walk back in, or call our Westlake guys, and walk back in and say, here's what you got to do. Now again, nobody likes laws, nobody likes rules, but these are there for a reason. And I don't want to go too far down this road, because that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here at this point is enhancing and improving the high level of service you already have. What we're talking about here is polishing of time. These people are doing this for free, and they're trying their best to do it on limited amounts of money. And to have a stable funding source is a very good thing, especially with loans and stuff like that. I'm not going to say they're going to get dramatically better loan interest rates, but they're going to get better interest rates than they do with the ESD than do with the ESD. Most ESDs have to do lease purchases. Yes, sir.
Who's their funding source?
Their funding source is the county right now. Who else?
County, city, Degrova, and donations.
Okay. So the way I'm looking at it is an ESD is a subsidized entity that helps county and city get a better fire department consortium. Prior to that, then it comes out of city or county budgets in order to accommodate those services. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Right now, from the city of Granbury's perspective, in my opinion, I think the city is doing everything they can to upgrade everything in their fire departments within the city. If we did, and I don't know if you're talking about a countywide ESD or just a local ESD just for the city of Decorova. Regardless if it's just an ESD for Decorova, it doesn't matter what fire department. If they need help, everybody's going to go. Whoever's calling, they're going to go and help. That's just the nature of Hood County.
That's the nature of
Any fire department, pretty much. But what I'm looking out for the citizens of Granbury and what they've done and how much they've invested into their fire department and what the city management has done in order to bring those up to standards and bring their equipment up. And then you come in with a countywide ESD. In my perspective, then you're taxing the city residents again on what they're trying to do countywide. The city residents have already paid their dues to bring up the fire
But
department.
you could give up, and I'll just say, you could give up your fire department, and that give up that part of your budget, and that would be taken over by the ESD. Now, I don't know how much you're putting in right now. I don't know if you can sit there and say we're putting in 8 cents per $100 valuation. I know the city of Austin is putting 32 cents per $100 valuation. And that includes everything, including the debt service on the stations and the trucks and the bonds and all that stuff. And when you look at their actual tax rate, out of their 47-cent tax rate, 21 cents of that tax rate goes to just payroll and benefits for the firefighter. But let me back up and tell you what I think you should do. But I'm Ken Campbell, I don't live here. So the way if you've already got a municipal fire department, even if it's volunteer, you don't consent to your territorial limits being included. You consent to your ETJ. That way you get supplemented by what you're already doing out in the county. And the ESD would contract with you to provide that service if it's appropriate. One thing about it, it's not just Acton, DCB, it's not just DCB that's in this. It's all your ETJ, all the way to your city limits through, what's that? It's Acton, right? Acton's unincorporated. And so it's all that area. And that's what they're going to serve, because that's their historic service area. Yes, y'all come out and help, we come and help. I assume we all help each other in this county. So that's what you're doing, is that it would not, if I were Granbury, because you're going to head towards the municipal fire department at some point, where you're going to have to get paid staff and those kinds of things at some point to supplement your volunteers, is I would consent to the ETJ. If I were president, I would have consented. They did not consent to their ETJ. And what's funny is they're surrounded on 2 out of 3 sides by ESDs that they've already consented to that are already in the ESD. I'm not going to bad down you, Chief, or anything else. I understand why you're doing what you're doing, and that makes sense. Again, I'm here right now for them, for DCD Acton, but I'm here to help y'all work good, because there's going to have to be planning about this. Do you want to back up and do a countywide ESD? You can opt out. I would never opt out my ETJ, because then I'm cutting off potential revenue source. It may or may not be more to the county. I don't know. The thing that I was asked by this gentleman over here is what happens with all the fine county equipment that we have? It's still the county's equipment. The county owns it. Okay? County money went to it. They own it, no matter how it's high. That's just the law. We can't give anything away. That's not going to go away. Hopefully, we can enhance and supplement what the county's already done for you. That's the goal. It's not just simply taxing for the sake of taxing, and these guys have a plan, and they've got to go sell it to their taxpayers, or potential taxpayers, of why they want this ESD. But if I were Granbury, and this is the same thing as I'm doing one in Hunt County right now, it is a countywide ESD. Unfortunately, we've got about 19 different cities, and some of them just have ETJ or from another surrounding county in ours. They don't even understand what this is about. They don't even know who puts out their fires. Okay? All right? They have no idea how it even works. But Commerce and Greenville already have municipal paid fire departments. They're going to opt out. They're going to leave their ETJ in and consent to that because they want that revenue source. The county wants out of the firefighting business. So it depends. And so that's what I'm here for. And there are other attorneys out there to help you, or other people who can help you with this. But every county is different. If you've seen one ESD, you've seen one ESD. We all do a little bit different within the parameters of the law. So in my mind, if it were Ken Campbell, and I was in Hood County, not knowing anything about Hood County very much, is that Granbury would be out. You would include the CTJ, Crest would include the CTJ, whomever else. Kohler would be in all the way, because it's incorporated, right? Kohler would be in all the way. Now you have to worry about a budget for a fire department. That's the ESD's problem. And yes, we are taxing their citizens, but they're our citizens too. Nobody gets upset with the school district, right? I assume you don't. I mean, sure, nobody likes taxes. But that's their job to educate kids, not yours. So it depends on what your political subdivision is for, and what you're doing with it, and how we want to go here. What I guarantee you don't want to be is the last ESD in Hood County. Because you will be the rump state of the world. And that's what happened in Travis County. ESD 13 did not get formed until the early 2000s. Before that, they relied on the good graces of their neighbors and the kindness of strangers, mainly Elgin and Copeland and Maynard, to come out there and put out their fires. That was not our primary deal. They ended up with all the agricultural land use valuation, because it's all just farms out there, and they ended up with that, and they made $26,000 a year. They could barely pay anybody. All right? So my point is that we need to, you need to, more than point, I'll be glad to help you, figure out how do we make this work. Where's our tourist areas versus where's our areas that are going to be northeast Travis County? How can we make sure that everybody's vote is promoted properly? And we're not just going out in Johnson County and Hill County. We're not just going out and buying brand new shiny fire trucks for the fund. Lakeview needs a fire truck. They don't have a Class A pumper. That will help them with their ISO rating. Let's buy them that. I'm sorry, Merkin, or whomever you are, you're not getting a new engine this year. You've got a perfectly good one. We know it's 20 years old, but it works, and it's a Class A pump. And this guy needs a tender over here. We have no water supply. These guys need brush trucks. And, you know, I used to think everybody knew what a brush truck was. You go to West Texas, completely different concept, okay? You go down to us, we're smaller, we're on the 350 or the 250 chassis. They're driving the 6.5s around, and they like it, and they appreciate it. We can't do that, we're too hilly. It just flat doesn't work. But my point is that's what the ESD is going to do, is it's going to take it to the next level. Because again, I'm not voting for an ESD if it's just more money for the volunteers to play with. I'm voting for an ESD if the VFD can convince me of how they're going to enhance the great level of services I'm already getting. I want to talk about polishing a diamond, not remaking blue.
Good question. Something that's absolutely critical to Cook County, and it was really demonstrated this last week, was our mutual aid. And Granbury being the county seat, mutual aid to me is critical, particularly with nursing homes and just some of the larger structures that I have here. So my question is really, I don't know the answer to this. I think I know the answer, but I don't know, is with Toller and De Cordova, you know, being the proverbial first two through the brick wall, and even if this does happen, again, that their ESDs will be set up, and it's a mutual aid question. We have great relationships with Toller and De Cordova, and that's with their chiefs and their membership, which is what it is right now. But when that board's set in place, the mutual aid agreement will have to be through the board, correct?
No, not necessarily. No, because they're still, we're contracting. The way I contract is working, and that's what we have to do. The ESD contracts, you dance with the one that's running. All right? The ESD will contract with them or Toller to provide the services to the ESD, which will include the city of Toller, which will include the city of Fort Bend. Okay? It will also include those county areas. The mutual aid will not change. And in fact, if you take your example further, in Williamson County, in Vernon County, because at some point the county was concerned, can we pay the ESD the usual county subsidy we give? Well, and this happened in Parker County too. It's happening in Palo Pinto County right now. Can we still pay legally? Yes, you can. If you're enhancing the services, the county can continue to do what they do. However, with that said, in these counties, the county money is transitioning to become what we call mutual aid money. Okay? So we're paying not for providing services, we're paying for you guys to go help each other and pay for the gas and expensive materials and all that stuff. So it may transition, but it's not going to change things. Yes, the ESD would be involved and be another party to that agreement, that interlocal agreement, but it's actually not interlocal because you're mainly contracting with non-governmental entities. It's just a contract. Okay? But it would be part of that stuff. Did we figure out how we transition that money or what we call it, or even if we need to mess with it? Yes, the ESD would be involved because it's ultimately going to be their assets at some point.
I think one of the things to kind of clear up, an ESD is not De Cordova Fire Department.
No, I realize it.
Okay, and that's one thing. I know that's a lot of confusion, a lot of places. They think the department is now the ESD. It is not. And like you said, the ESD is governing bodies like the Commissioner's Court. They come in and they contract with the individual entities that may be already in existence there and all that.
My big fear out of this is, right out of the gate, it would be fine, leapfrog 5, 10, 15 years down the gate, okay? Assuming that we're still volunteer, because right now, today, our volunteer department's about as good as you can physically ask from a volunteer department. Personnel, response times, on it. Doing an ESD, in my opinion, today, for us, is not a big deal. But that's regardless of this discussion, okay?
For the
So,
city, or
as we go forward, do what?
For the city, I agree with you. I don't disagree with you.
And so I'm looking at it from the future of saying, okay, we're 15 years down the road and we're still volunteer. okay? You're gonna hit the board, these boards, looking at the city, because again, being county seat, higher call volume, we have calls coming to us, our mutual aids coming to us. And I see this cascading effect of, well, we're coming into the city for 3 times a month or 10 times a month, whatever, for mutual aid. And now the billing process starts. And that is my big cascading fear out of this, is that one of the best things that we have right now is that mutual aid, where Toller calls, we go.
Well, I'll just say this.
We call Toller and they come. And
Right.
same for everyone, all 8 other departments.
That's not going to change. Lawyers like to deal in black and white, but I can 99% guarantee you that mutual aid situation is not going to change. Unless you have a jerk fire chief somewhere, which you may have had to deal with in the past. But you're still going to be going out there, they're still going to be coming here. We mutual aid with Austin every day. We don't even have a mutual aid agreement anymore, because we're in auto aid. But we use the statewide system. And here's something that's very important, start talking about the billing. Now, I haven't seen y'all's mutual aid agreement, but you may be illegal and don't even realize it. But we're not even illegal, impractical, okay? We learned this, y'all may remember when Travis County and Bastrop County burned to the ground in 2011, all right? We had a mutual aid agreement, and it specifically said neither side is going to pay anything. Well, guess who doesn't pay when you have that kind of agreement? It's the Texas Forest Service and the United States Government. They say, if you're already going to be there, why should we pay for it? Our fire started on September 11, 2011. We went for our reimbursements. We literally spent a month. I literally spent a week and a half in Dallas area and in Bastrop. We put all our reimbursement stuff together for the state and federal government. They said, oh, we got a mutual aid agreement, so nobody gets paid. We're not paying you a dime. And I went back and looked at that agreement, and thank God it started on September 1st, 2011. We go under the statewide Chapter 411 mutual aid. So you call for it. Now we got auto aid, but if you need more than auto aid, we call for mutual aid. And then mutual aid, as you know, is you send it if you got it, if you want it. All right? So the bottom line is it's not going to change the mutual aid. It's not necessarily going to change being all volunteer. That's up to y'all deciding what your citizens deserve. And if you have not adequate, maybe not a good word. If you have excellent coverage with your volunteer system, it should never change. Okay, we ran into Austin all the time with volunteers. It irked the dog out of those paid guys in Austin who hadn't come through our ranks to get on that fire department. But right now, I will say about 40 to 50% of Austin Fire Department came from one of our surrounding cities or volunteer fire departments. And so that's not going to change. You'll always have jerky chiefs. You'll always have territorial issues, okay? That's a problem with personalities. That's not a problem with these cities.
Yeah.
So as Toller chief, I've been chief for 17 years. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not always going to be the chief, but as far as I'm concerned, nobody's even going to know that we have an ESD, except we might show up with better stuff. We're still, if you call, we're going to come, just like it is in the rest of the county. We have one of the busiest power truck in the county. We run it all over the county. So, I mean, and to speak to Granbury, as much as y'all have invested in the fire department, y'all are still getting a hell of a deal for what you did. That department right now should cost y'all a couple of $1 million, so be thankful for what you have.
Yeah, that's the thing, with Granbury is you guys have the resources and the funding, and that's all we're looking for is some of that. It's not about going paid or getting rid of volunteers. It's about meeting the demand of the call volume that is coming our way. Steve pulled our numbers, 2009 to now has gone up 250%. We run that out to 2030. That's 3,800 calls in our fire service district. We can't, all we're looking for is an equal playing field.
Yeah, I always look at it as, and you guys look at it the same way, that's why you're considering this, is how does it affect you? What can you do to make it better? And I look at it the same way, is I don't take this the wrong way, I don't care whether you go ESD or stay volunteer, I don't care. My question is when you guys potentially go ESD, how does it affect me?
It does, and in
And our
fact,
department?
I will say this, in all honesty, and we have worked on what the area for the DCB Act and Tuller's obviously a little further away. We've worked on what that boundary is. And there's every possibility. For example, we've tried not to do this where we have some territory that we can't get to without running through Granbury necessarily. Okay, we're not out doing the land grab. So the point is that there's every possibility that if Granbury can get to it faster, I don't think Tuller's even touching close to any of this right now. So, but if you can get there faster, the ESD's probably going to contract with the city for servicing those areas with you. That's how it works. You will, I would say is, it's never seamless, nothing's ever seamless, but I'll go back again. 99.9% sure you're not going to get rid of your volunteers. 99.9% sure it is not going to affect how you do mutual aid. In fact, it will probably enhance it. Because then you can start talking about, and I didn't know y'all had a ladder truck. All right, I assume y'all have that. Y'all are probably the only two that do it in the district. No, y'all do it, I've seen it. Yeah.
You're over there in Crescent.
All right, so the bottom line is now you can start thinking about if there's an adequate funding source, okay, instead of a ladder, why don't y'all do a rescue? Or why don't y'all do this? So again, it's no different than what you're doing now. It's y'all sitting down as chiefs and as political subdivisions with the county and working through what do we need and where do we need? How to invest in that. Yes, sir.
With the creation of ESD, you said there's 5 board members.
Yes, sir.
And those are strictly appointed by the commissioners. So the city has no influence on those.
Oh, I think you have a lot of influence. I don't know, I assume every one of your commissioners' court districts go into the city, right?
We do.
You're gonna have 5
Try not to
people there
because of the taxes.
that they're gonna be talking about, and I don't know where they all live.
That's good.
Well, yeah, well, that's the truth, that's what I'm saying. I don't know where you all live, but you've got 6 advocates already. Y'all have 6 or 4, right, 5 commissioners?
Commissioners and judge.
Yeah, okay. All right, so the point is that you're going to have an advocate there. If I were these guys right here, I would be looking to, if we're doing it in DCP active, now, your city councilman cannot be on this board, because that's dual office. Your city manager can. Somebody else from the city can be on there. And so the bottom line is you, just like anybody else, go talk to these guys and say, hey, we need some representation. Now, if you're out of the ESD, you're not in the ESD, don't expect a whole lot of response for that. But I guarantee you, they're still going to say, yeah, you know what? If they live in that area and they favor Granbury, because they got to live in the area and won't be living in Granbury, then we'll put that person on the board.
What's the administrative cost? Do those board members get paid? And then the follow-on question is, what other staff that political body is needed that will be getting paid out of this ESD?
None. ESD commissioners have the ability, and it's like water district, it used to be $3,500 a year maximum. You've got a $50 net per day per diem when you actually worked as a commissioner if you wanted to. Bear County, those guys do it. I think it's down to like 7,000 max. So that would be 5 times 7, 35,000. They're not going to have that kind of money. I don't get paid. I'm the secretary. Guess who writes all the letters? Guess who does all the correspondence? Our treasurer, guess who does all the bills? And we're a $2.5 billion fire department with 15 paid staff. Our chief certainly helps out, right? But we're doing it. We don't have any administrators. Some do, some don't. Lake Travis does, ESD 6 does, but they've got 7 stations. They're bigger than this whole area would be. And they do have administrators, and they have people, office managers. So does Oak Hill. They've got 3 stations. But it just depends. You don't have to have any. We don't, we never have. Other than, we wouldn't have that, and our chief does a lot of heavy lifting for us. But I get to make all the phone calls. In fact, on the way down here, I am from my truck, and I have been all week, because I looked at my billing records, I literally spent 72 hours responding to calls. I did not work a day, I worked 4 hours over last week in my office. Because I'm out there getting water distribution pods set up for everybody, because everybody's under a boil water notice, and most of us lost our water. That's what I'm doing. And us and the other chiefs are doing that together, and the Department of, our Office of Emergency Management, and all of our cities. So this morning, I was making sure that the press release got out from my truck while I was driving here to let people know that they can go to Austin Bridge Bible Church, which happens to be my church, which is next to our fire station, and we're distributing water. I know y'all just got water in from Michigan, and I have to work on that. So the point is that you don't have to have anybody. Now, I will say this, and this is just Ken Campbell's rough rule of thumb, but the ESD will have to pay for an attorney. And just so y'all know, I'm $200 an hour. I only bill when you ask me. I'm your attorney until you tell me I'm not. I don't require a retainer or anything like that. Okay? You will have to have an auditor. And that's going to probably cost about $5,000. An audit, no matter who you do it for, no matter how big, how small, is going to cost $5,000 to $7,000. It can get bigger. All right? So you're going to have that. The ESD is going to have to set aside money, which they'll never see or lose. They will pay it, but they'll have to pay the tax assessor collector, just like every other political subdivision in this county does, to collect taxes for them. They will have to pay the Central Appraisal District their proportionate share of the cost of the appraisals. Those are the fixed costs that they have. Obviously, you'd like to see them buying staplers and things that they need. You can go as good as you want. Bear County went completely good. The first ESD they had there, they all went and bought signs, magnetic signs to put on the sides of their cars saying, Bear County ESD 1 commissioner, like anybody cared. All right? They did, obviously. All right? And then they were buying themselves laptops and stuff like that. And that's fine. You may need, I'm sure y'all do it here. I'm sure for your city council you probably do that. But the point is that there are fixed costs, which are the auditor, the lawyer, the CAD, and the tax assessor collector. And then there's some other costs that are in there for just being a political subdivision. They probably join the State Association of Fire and Emergency Districts, just like they're in the Texas Association of Counties, y'all are in the Texas Municipal League. They'll probably be in that. So that'll be an expense. It's relatively nominal, $250 for them. Okay, there'll be some other expenses, like if they're buying paper or whatever. But they'll also be relying on what the infrastructure's already been done here by these guys. And functionally, what's going to happen is the president, if the ESD is created, the president of DCDE acting will be like the city manager for the district, because that's the administrative side. Okay? The fire chief, I'm sorry.
The ESD has to have an office, is that right?
No.
Okay.
It could be in your station.
No, it can't.
You don't have to have an office per se. I mean, there's a lot of cities out there that don't have offices, right? Okay? No, you don't have to have an office. We do have an office in our fire station for all of us commissioners to use. Also, all of our pay staff uses it too. Okay? The chief has his office. But you don't have to have an office. One thing we do have to do is every January, we have to publish in a paper of general circulation in the county in which we are, or the next available county, if there's not one there, our administrative address, which could be a P.O. box. Okay? But you don't have to have it. We would probably use whatever their mailing address is or whatever their physical address. We use 353 South Commons Ford Road because that's where our fire station is. And that's where we get our deliveries. So that's what we do. So you don't have to have an office. You don't have to have a place per se. I've got ESDs that don't have even any public buildings, even churches. They may have a community center. And then they go out and get a P.O. box that the president or whoever goes and picks it up from. I mean, I'm telling you right now, with Hunt County, I've been trying to get all this consent stuff and everything. Half those cities' phone numbers don't even work. I can't get hold of anybody. I'll send letters to the Texas Almanac or the Texas State Directory says it's the mayor, and I'll get a return. All right, I'll go look at their website. You don't have to have all that overhead. You do have to pay for certain things, and it's a percentage, and it comes out of the money that comes to them. So it's all taken care of already.
Is this at the discretion of the county that these ESDs possibly have to pay their portion of dispatch costs too?
Yes. Yes.
And if they elect to use the county for fire investigation, is that also paid? They have to pay the county reimbursement?
No, because assuming they're not in a municipality, so the Court of Bend theoretically has to have an interlocal, assuming they don't have their own fire code and their own fire marshal. Granbury has to have the same thing, because y'all are now in charge, since you're a city, they have no jurisdiction within. Now, in the unincorporated areas, they got the jurisdiction. So that's not gonna change unless we go do a fire code or something. And then we'll start talking about ILAs, but they can't come in and enforce anything in your cities without your permission, without an interlocal agreement, otherwise it's kind of giving things away. Now, they could, it's just sort of a mutual aid kind of thing, I guess they could, but legally it's not kosher. So there has to be some sort of interlocal agreement to come in. They do have authority, I think, that go back and look, they may have authority over, I don't think they have authority over investigation, so there has to be an ILA there to do it once you're in an incorporated area, so. I mean, y'all may or may not be doing it, but even if you're doing it. Yes, sir.
I have two questions about fire.
Well, and let me finish on that, because I'm pretty sure that's right, because technically the sheriff doesn't have any authority. I mean, they have countywide authority, but the sheriff can't come into Granbury without an ILA, and they certainly can't enforce Granbury's ordinances, so it's the same thing. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Two questions about fire district lines. Long story short, we have a third station that came online about 3 years ago. Fire district lines were never reevaluated, redrawn off of that. So that's the first question is cat's kind of out of the bag on this for the proposed ESD district for Degradova. The station's on the far east side of the town, okay? So that's the first question is
East side of Granbury or east side?
yeah, far east side of Granbury.
I've been there.
So, like I said, we have not readdressed the fire district lines. God, I'd be lying to you if I told you when. From what I understand, since '96. Jeff, you might be able to add to that. I honestly don't know.
No, Brian was fire marshal back when we.
Yeah, we did them because that's where we did the debate off of like Neareye Road and stuff like that.
Okay, when was that? Approximately.
Prior to 2013, because I left in 13.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's been at least 8 years.
Well, let me tell you how that works legally, and then we'll talk about your individual issues. But the fire marshal, when there are no ESDs, and they don't have the authority over cities either, they determine the district boundaries of who responds in what areas in the unincorporated areas of the county. So that was probably drawn up by consensus, and hopefully I'll do it up by who can get there fast, that kind of stuff. So yes, it needs to be reevaluated.
Yeah, the Chiefs Board or the Firefighter Association sat down and everybody agreed to it.
And that's how it's usually done. Sometimes the fire marshal has to get involved if you have a fire marshal, as to, can you really serve that? And can you really get there? Is there a bridge across Lake Travis? No, there's not. Then shut up. That's not going to be in your territory. All right? So, the point is that your fire district, your VFD boundaries are historic asset more than likely. I mean, yes, y'all reached a consensus on how I got there, but that's a consensus. Okay, the fire marshal could dictate it. I assume that they probably did, or they at least had some helpful suggestions. When the ESD is formed, that is their territory. The fire marshal has no authority over an ESD. They can coordinate with, they can assist. But that's the district territory, and the district decides who responds in that area. As the primary response. Okay? So the bottom line is yes, we may need to think about that, which goes back to my original point. If y'all got a new station over in Granbury on the far east side that sort of overlaps this, well, the ESD may decide, well, you know what, we can't get there faster than you can. So we'll contract with you for this area here, and then we'll work out the price.
So here's what the very first question is are we able to still discuss and negotiate that boundary right now, or is that fixed?
No, the district boundary right now is on a piece of paper attached to the petition that these folks up here are going to, and one of the things the statute says is that the Commissioner's Court has jurisdiction over any issue related to the creation of the district, and that it will make those determinations and fix the district's boundaries. So we could petition for X and we get Y when we're all done. Now, the Commissioner's Court doesn't have unlimited jurisdiction to just go redraw the map, and they certainly can't add things to the map because those people haven't petitioned for it. But they might be able to take it away. And that's another thing just to think about here in this case, is that we're talking about the Court of Bend being in there. So really we're going to have 2 elections in one. Because, well, actually, we're going to have technically 3, okay? because I don't know how much ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction, DCB has, but Granbury definitely has some of them, okay? And so if Granbury consents to the vote for the possible creation of the district, that Granbury ETJ is going to be coded out by your county clerk, or if you have an elections administrator, it's going to be coded out. It's got to pass there. It's going to be coded out for Decorah Bend. It's going to be coded out just for the county areas that aren't anybody's ETJ, which I can't imagine there is any area around in this one that's not somebody's ETJ, pretty much. And Crescent's. The Crescent has said that they don't want to consent right now. That's fine. The point is that that's 4 elections in one, right? If it passes overall, the district's created. If it doesn't pass in Crescent's ETJ, then it's not created. All right? And this is very important to understand because Bastrop, when we created Bastrop County ESD1, Bastrop backs up to the west to Travis County, to the south to Hayes. And when we created that first ESD, it was wholly in the county, so those people were appointed. If you go outside, if your ESD is bigger than one county, or if you're in a county with a population of whatever, above whatever, that's on the intercoastal waterway, or you're in Smith County, because we can't just say Smith County, okay? I mean, when we passed horse racing, one of the things we did is we tried to limit dog racing to only the coast. Well, we couldn't just say, okay, it's going to be Harris County, and it's going to be whatever Laredo is, I can't remember right now, Oasis County. We can't say that. So we said, any county with a population of 190,000 or greater on the Texas coast, with all or part of an island in its jurisdiction. Well, Orange County, about once every 10 years, when the neap tide's right, they have an island. So they thought they were included in that. But that's what we have to do, is we have to draw that out. And I'm sorry, I forgot exactly why I was going on that tangent.
Well, just
To answer your question again about,
yeah, just reevaluating the district lines. Make
there's
sure they're
nothing
not
that says you
concrete.
can't reevaluate.
Because it's not a huge area that we need to discuss, and I've talked to Chief Becker and I've talked to Chief Wooten about it. And it's just been in passing because we've been waiting for this meeting. And then my second question is, Matt, I know you guys have talked about building like a second station, and again, this is just something I don't understand. And let's just say that second station's right there at Brushy Road. Maybe even further down, Roberts Court. And I get why you put a station right there, because the physical distance for you guys to try and get to that area.
And ISO.
Right, yeah, something like that. So my question is how does that affect the districts as the ESDs and they start filling out their district appropriately for good coverage and all that stuff? Does that ship the lines over time?
It does not ship the lines. Now, ESDs can trade territory with each other, and I've done that all over the state of Texas. It has to who can get there faster, or we built a station over here. We're doing it right now in Canyon Lake and Bracken, which covers the Canyon Lake area. It's actually Kamal County ESD3 and ESD2 because they have an EMS ESD, but it's basically Canyon Lake is the donut hole around it. Well, Bracken, they're both looking at literally almost building for their own citizens and their service needs, building stations across the street from each other, because that's the divide. And so they stopped and said, well, that's stupid. All right, let's pick a place. Let's build one there. We'll join it up. We did it in Austin with Shady Hollow Mud. Shady Hollow built ESD5, a station, and then we covered Austin from it. And we had an agreement with Austin if they wanted to move an engine company, which didn't make sense to have 2 engine companies in the same house, generally speaking, that are running to the same areas. If they want to move in, then they can move in. So all this stuff, nothing changes. Y'all work out the service areas, and in fact, you may come up with a better plan because now everybody's thinking, okay, now we've got political subdivisions to deal with, and more to the point, do you really need that station there? And that's what we did with Georgetown. That's what we did with Round Rock. We were building a station, and I can't remember the name of the road right now, General Williamson Drive. We were building a station. ESD 8 was building a station out there. Georgetown was going to man it. Georgetown was going to put the trucks in it. And it would eventually be annexed until they changed the annexation laws last session. It was going to be annexed, and it would become their station. All right? Because they have to buy it from us at fair market value if we don't need it anymore as a result of the annexation. But the bottom line is that we started planning more appropriately, so where do we need to put the stations? Because we do have historic accidents when we have the Man Shack station right next to the Travis County Fire Rescue Station, because that's just how they did it back then. Historic accident, well, let's get rid of one of these stations. Yes, sir.
Kind of on something you were talking about with the, how would that affect if, you know, if you guys built a second station out there? Long-term, the only thing might happen is if that was, if the ESD was contracted with Granbury for the DTJ, when that contract expires, if their station's a better service, they may not re-contract with you and contract with Toller to cover that area.
And I don't know how,
And that-
I don't know that at all, because you're over in the western part, right?
Right, our, it's just county. There's no, I think the only place we may get close to the ETJ is on 370.
So who's between you and Granbury as fire department? Okay, so y'all met up against Granbury. From the
But their
west.
district extends out past their ETJ.
Right, yeah, that's just their historic service, right? But fair enough. So, but what I'm getting at there is that if there was an intervening VFD between you two, they may be talking to that other one about how do you build your station? And then we won't have to build a station out here. Because we're all looking at that ISO thing, that 5 mile, 5 road miles, and concentricities, and all the stuff that goes into it as to where we put our stations. Because again, nobody builds, generally speaking, an EMS station where there's nobody living, or very few people. You only build it where there's a demand. We have to build fire stations where nobody lives, just for the ISO rating for those 2 people who live there or whatever. And we can affect those people. EMS doesn't affect them other than they die. All right? So hopefully y'all are already doing that kind of planning, and Granbury's not out just building a station because it would best serve Granbury. They're also talking to everybody else and saying, well, this will help Crescent, and this will help whomever.
Could you speak to, it reminded me of it when we talked about the annexation, how the city's being limited in their ability to annex kind of drives growth in unincorporated areas.
Correct.
And how ESD helps fund fire protection in those county areas.
Well, and that's exactly right. Since cities can no longer unilaterally annex, except in some very limited circumstances, and by the way, I'm a city attorney in a number of towns, so I have to deal with this issue too, is what has happened historically is that when a city that's not in an ESD, so let's use Austin because that's the easiest one to use. They have a municipal fire department. When they annexed into ESD 10, ESD 9, ESD whatever it was, ESD 4 actually contracts with the city down to provide their fire service. They don't have a fire department anymore because there are 16 separate little areas out there. And of course, the city cherry-picked everything and left us all the houses with no hydrants, right?
Yeah.
So, but the point is that when the annexation happened and the city removes the territory, if it does, from the district, then the city has to pay a proportionate share of debt based on the percentage of the district that's removed. So you take the appraised value of the ESD in toto, and then you take the appraised value of that area that's annexed, okay, you come up with a percentage, let's say it's 0.005%. Then we have 100,000, well, let's make it easy because I'm a lawyer and I can't do math. Let's just make it easy. You take 10% of our appraised value of that annexation, we have $100,000 in debt. Granbury would have to pay us $10,000, okay? And it would have to buy any fire trucks or stations that we don't need as a result of that annexation. Since y'all are no longer, and are y'all more than 5,000? Are y'all general law? Are y'all home rule? Or general law? Home rule. Home rule. So they were the only ones, general law cities can't unilaterally annex either. So they're basically like a general law city now, essentially. Is they got to either have a vote or have the majority of the property owners agree to it. So if there's an annexation, you probably would not remove that territory from that area. You might not. Let me tell you a story. All of Padre Island and all of Flower Bluff across the channel is the Oasis County Emergency Services District Number 2. It is wholly within the city of Corpus Christi. Half of the Oasis County Emergency Services District Number 1 is in the city of Corpus Christi. What we do is we work with the city of Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi can only afford so many ambulances, so we bought an ambulance and then for them. We also have enhanced coverage because they don't have a station on Padre Island. Because they can't afford a building. So we cover that. So Granbury doesn't necessarily have to remove territory. A city does not necessarily have to remove territory. If you're a city like BCB would be, that's already in the district, you could technically remove that area that you annexed, which is is relatively small. I'll give you an example of how this happened. And it's always involved down in personalities and money. But Castroville, Texas, if you're all familiar with that, west of San Antonio, they're in Medina County, ESD number 1, wholly and completely. All right? The Walmart came to town, but nobody wants to be in Castroville because why pay the extra taxes? Plus, the water comes from SAWS, and the electricity comes from whatever electric company is out there. CPS. All right? So nobody wants to be in the city. They want to be just outside the city. And they're a general law city, so they can't just unilaterally annex. Well, they didn't talk to us, and that's fine. And Walmart came to town, and nobody knew, and they did a development agreement with Walmart and said, the second that you get your certificate of occupancy, that is going to be considered a voluntary application for annexation into the city of Castroville. We're fine with that. It's a change of boundaries. It's a change of territory. It means nothing to anybody. The problem was we've had a sales tax for 10 years. What the city of Castroville forgot is that all the sales tax is taken up by the 0.5% the county gets and the 1.5% that we get. First in time, first in right. They put $800,000 a year in their budget for sales tax revenue from Walmart. Guess what they're not getting?
Zero.
$800,000. All right? We did an agreement with them and we split it 50-50. Nobody has an argument about who deserves more. Yeah, you provide the police. You know, yeah, we provide the fire. Yeah, infrastructure, whatever. You made Walmart build it anyway. So we split it. We did an allocation agreement. Very simple. But that's my point is that we came down to literally 4 acres of Medina County outside the city of Castroville, and the city, and they were stupid, and I'll tell them to their face, and you can repeat it to them if you want, they were going to disannex that, because you can disannex it at any time. There is no statute of limitations for cities or governments. So the statute just says, upon annexation, the city can remove it. Tomorrow, Corpus Christi could eliminate ESD2 if they wanted to. They don't want to. My point is, they were going to disannex that Walmart and the parking lot. And then they expected us to cover it out of the goodness of our hearts. And we said, no, we'll do an allocation agreement with you. You're not going to get as much money as you thought, but I'm sorry, go talk to the county about their hackers. If it really upsets you that much. Okay, my point is we worked through that, but they could have removed that parking lot, and we also provide EMS transport, so they would have no ambulances to the Walmart. And guess who got really ticked off? Exactly. And Walmart said, this nonsense is not going to fly, boys. All right? But that could be an issue that you have later on. Y'all aren't going to have that kind of issue. All right? We worked through it. Buta's the same way. The city of Buda is wholly in ESD number 8 and ESD number 2. Buda, back then, they could annex unilaterally. They're a home rule city, and they would. It was just a change of territory. It didn't mean anything to us as the fire department covered what the fire department covered. It meant something to their police department. It meant something to the sheriff's department. But it didn't mean anything to us. It didn't mean anything to the school district. All right? We realized, and the city was actually very gracious because they were doing a bunch of annexations. As a result, we realized we needed a station. The EDC, Economic Development Corporation, said, hey, we're going to work with you to build a new station. And then we said, well, wait a minute, y'all aren't going to be getting that tax revenue that you think you're going to get because it's just a change of boundaries. How can we help you now? Thank you for being gracious to want to help us, but really, you're the ones that we can do something from. So I hope you talk, all right? But that's how it works as far as annexation goes. And I know that's been way into it, but I think Granbury wants to know that because I think that's important to Granbury. DCB is not going to be annexing anything. All right? Toller may not. I don't know how y'all's water systems work. Some cities like Fort Worth, even though they've got a CCN where they have to provide the water out there, on the eastern side of ESD1, they're forcing those developers to get into Fort Worth. I said, we're not going to give you water. Well, you have to. You've got a CCN. So if either takes out of the CCN, we'll do our own MUD, or consent to a MUD, or we'll create one legislatively. But the point is that there's not a lot of reason to be in a city necessarily. You're just paying more taxes. Now, I do agree that you provide services. I don't want to piss anybody off, okay? There's a lot more to it than that. But the point is that all things being equal, you'd be wherever you pay less taxes, right? But we work together. All over this state, we have worked together over the years. And I don't see why it would be any different in Hood County, and it sounds like y'all are already working together as it is. So y'all will work out jurisdictional boundaries, you'll work out who gets paid by whom. We need to seriously consider, do we do 5 ESDs? Do we do 1? Do we do 4 because it's geographically more tenable? I think it may be with Lake Granbury and stuff, for some of these areas to have a different ESD, just because of can you get there or not. That's up to y'all. Yes, sir.
If De Cordova creates an ESD, can Pecan, the neighboring department, join their ESD at a later
Yes.
time?
We are like a general law city. ESDs are like general law cities. In fact, Parker County ESD 1 is a good example of this. Parker County ESD 1 started in Springtown. It has come through Reno, it's come all the way down to Aledo, and it's coming back around. And it's done in minutes, okay? We've basically got the whole eastern side. Then 6 comes in on the southern, then you got 7, 8 along there. You got ESD 3, which is around,
Hudson Oaks.
huh?
Hudson Oaks.
Hudson Oaks, thank you, sir, thank you, Chief. But it kind of surrounds Weatherford. All right, Weatherford's actually, we contract with Weatherford now to provide our fire service in those areas, including Hudson Oaks. But the point is, I'm sorry, your question is, so I can answer this without taking it.
Can a neighboring department join?
Yes, we can annex. In fact, well, that's what we did, is we even got Peaster way over here. I forgot about that. So Peaster way over here. All it takes is a petition of 50 people in an area that's not already included in an ESD. Same thing as the creation petition, except it's 100 people for creation. For annexation, it's 50 people who are both residents of the district and, registered voters in the district and own real property. And then we go to a vote, it's kind of like double secret probation, okay? The annexed area wants to be annexed in, has to say yes. The ESD has to say yes. If they both say yes, then we're in. Okay, we've done this in Wilson County. Wilson County ESD 1 was just Laverne, basically area. Now we're all the way out to Stockdale. Stockdale has an EMS ESD, and they've annexed all the way into Laverne. So now we have 2 ESDs, one providing EMS transport and the other providing fire and first responder together, and we're sharing stations. So, yes, we have the ability to annex on petition, like a general law city.
We'll be your guinea pigs if it works.
Right.
Then y'all do that.
And you do want to think about, is there an area here that is extremely rural and will generate $10,000 a year in taxes? We probably want to combine that with the volunteer fire department out there is with a rich area, right? Because again, we want to float everybody's flow, at least in my opinion. That's sort of the point of government. I don't want to leave them as a wrong state. So that's some of the ideas that y'all need to talk about.
Can you speak to, I guess, the meetings I had with potential candidates before the election and with current commissioners? One that they all brought up was, well, if you get an ESD, we got to take your stuff. Can we speak to that, using the
Yes.
county
No,
equipment
you
in
don't.
the ESD? And
You don't. In fact, all over in Johnson County, I'll give you a better example. Here's an example. No, you don't have to. And in Parker County, because Parker County provides all of us with tenders. So we just have a local agreement, and that way the county knows that it's enhanced. They've spent that money. Now, will they buy us more tenders later? Well, they actually have, but will they do it in the future? I don't know. It sort of depends on their budget and everything else. Plus, we're basically all ESD'd up at this point. Before, and that's the one thing you got to think about is the county kind of has to hold on because everybody, whether they're in the ESD or not, is paying county taxes, right? So it's kind of hard to say, well, we're going to cut you off because you got an ESD. Well, I'm still paying for that. But you work through it. But the county still, and in Hill County, they still give tenders out to use. The ESD is kind of taking that over in Hill County now, and we're making sure everybody has what they need. But that's our job now. So the answer is no, it all stays there. Whether y'all replace it or not is your issue. But yes, you can still give that there because, again, it's enhanced fire service. You could still pay the county money to the ESD, which I would prefer you do, but you could pay to the VFD still to enhance their services. It's not illegal as long as you're enhancing services. So, if that answers your question.
Just want to touch on something you just said. So everybody in the county is paying for the ESD?
No.
Okay.
Everybody's paying county taxes, including everybody in your city.
Okay.
So
So
paying county.
all the residents in the city will they have to be paying for this ESD?
No,
Okay.
only if it's in the ESD. What I'm saying is that right now, since you created the city of Granbury, or DCB, you're now responsible for your roads. Yeah, county people traveling, but the county's not paying for them anymore, unless y'all work out in their local place. Because you're responsible for those roads. You're no longer getting a sheriff's department. You've got a police department. You're theoretically taxing your citizens a higher tax rate for increased and enhanced services. That's what an ESD is all about. So no, you will not be paying the tax. Everybody pays the county tax. Not everybody pays the same school district tax or city tax or mud tax or whatever you've got out there. So y'all won't be paying for anything. You might get paid if you let your ETJ in.
Y'all have any questions? I know there was a lot of questions whenever I met.
Yeah, I've got one. So you've got all the residents in this new ESD, and what I hear that there will be a tax. What I've heard that it will probably be 10 cents on your property tax for the people in the ESD only. And in addition to that, there'll be a 2-cent sales tax.
No, not necessarily.
Well, but it says you can.
Yes.
Okay, so if you could, I thought you would, but let's say you don't. So it's 10 cents, and I own a $500,000 home. That's going to be $600 a year it's going to cost me in taxes.
Well, it's going to cost you $500 for sure on your property tax. As far as your sales tax goes, it depends. Right now, I don't know how y'all want it, but we don't shop.
Okay, so let's just for argument's sake then, $500. How are you going to justify to the people in your ESD that you spending that $500, where are you going to get the $500 benefit? So that's the question.
No, and that's exactly what they've got to sell, Commissioner. You're nailing it on the head.
Well, what is it? Do you know?
For us, it's the insurance savings.
Well, no, wait a minute. I don't want to have an insurance agent in here. You think you're going to save $500 a year on a $500,000 home for insurance? That's a question.
That's why I'm saying you can't go down the ISO road, but what they're going to do is provide more fire trucks. I'm hoping buy more bunker gear, outfit more bunkers. They better have a plan. You guys are not voting for a tax.
No.
You
No.
guys are not voting for
Nope.
a tax. You're voting to let people go decide whether or not they want to go taxes. You don't have to be for it. You can certainly be against it. But you don't have to be for it, but it's up to them to go sell this to their citizens. They better have a plan, and I understand my client does, they better have a plan as to why we would charge you an additional $500 a year.
We're hearing things like if we had an ESD, we could attract the Targets of the world and Academy Sports. Is there any truth to that in your experience?
I didn't say that. I hope you didn't hear that.
No, I've heard it, but I don't know where it came from. But I'm just wanting to, whether you've ever seen anything like that in your ESDs.
Well, and I have, because sometimes they will not come because they're going to have a 6.9 or a 9.9 or an 8 or a 10,
Okay.
and they're not going to have the water supply, and they're not sure if their store or their customers are going to be safe. I have had, down in South Texas in particular, where they move a Walmart from one potential location to another based on the fire service. Can I say that happens all the time? No. Can I say it's definitive? No. Can I say the converse of that, which is what I'm hearing you hear, that we will attract targets because of it? No. Maybe. Possibly. Sure. Everybody likes good fire service. And they're going to look into that. But Walmart's probably going to put a Walmart where they think they're going to sell them stuff.
I think so. Yeah.
Right? They probably don't care if it burns to the ground. They'll insure it.
Okay.
So that should not be a selling point.
Yeah, I would think not either.
Perspective, you pay right now, you're paying over $1,200 a year for the sheriff's department. They have a $7 million budget, by about 65,000 people in the county.
Well, we're paying something like the what is it? What do we pay each fire department? Our stipend that we give you guys a year, is it 30,000 apiece? 30. So about 30,000 times 9. The county's still going to pay that, from what I understand.
Not necessarily. I mean, that's y'all's decision. If you got it all ESD'd up, I can guarantee you, you'd be out of the fire department business and have $270,000 to spend somewhere else.
What day and what year would that happen after we created the ASD?
Well, if you create a countywide, you'd be
Immediately?
They start getting their money.
Immediately?
Parker County did it, literally. They kept around the subsidy money for a little while and said, hey, everybody's got an ESD, we're out of this business. That was our goal in the first place. In fact, the biggest problem Parkland County had was getting VFDs to go become an ESD so they could get out of the fire business. Because they said, well, you're giving us enough money now, thank you very much. So they finally had to say, we're cutting it off. Go get an ESD or figure it out. So, it will not make fires go out any faster. It might or might not save some lives. What we're trying to do, at least with these two, is they have a plan of what they intend to do to enhance the great stuff that the county's already giving them, that their citizens and their cities are already giving them, to get more of that to make it better for their citizens.
Commissioner Cotton, can I speak to that?
Sure, please.
Brent mentioned a few minutes ago, in 2009, I won't bore you with too much of the number. In 2009, we made 316 calls for the year. Last year in 2020, we made 1,096. That's a 250% growth rate in the number of calls we made over that 10 or 11 years. We extrapolate that out for another 10 years, in 2030, we could be making 3,800 calls a year. We can't do that with 29 volunteers and a budget of $100,000. This ESD vote, in my opinion, is not about today. It's about 5 to 10 years down the road. If you want fire service, I don't want to scare anybody, if you want fire service, we can't operate, and I'm going to speak for these guys here. We can't operate the way we're doing it now. And you guys are giving us some money, and we really appreciate that. It's just not enough for what we're projecting that we're going to be doing. It's barely enough now for golf tournaments, and we have mail-outs, and we have fundraisers and all that. 3,800 calls a year with 29 volunteers, that's not going to work.
We're the ninth fastest growing county in the nation. We have to start laying the groundwork today, 14 years from now. A big success story. Cy-Fair fire car down near Houston. We went filled in down there in Hurricane Harvey. They have 500,000 people. They bring in $40 million a year in their ESD. Well, when they started in 1984, they were a rural department. They didn't start getting developed until the mid-90s. And now they have 13 fire stations with a 90% paid staff. So we got to lay the groundwork today for 20 years from now, for 30 years. Because 20 years from now, it's going to be homes from the north border all the way out to South Dakota. It's going to be homes, whether we want it or whether we don't want it. That's
Well,
what we got to
County
plan
is
for.
one example of that. I'll give you an example. My ESD, when I started out in a rural fire prevention district, we had $40,000. And after we paid our $11,000 VFIS insurance bill, and we paid our $5,000 for our engine, we had like almost $2,000 for the complete units. And that was how it was. We're now at 2.1 million and full-time paid staff. But that took us a while, and that's the point, is that you're building for the future. We were a very rural area in Travis County. They called us Cedar Choppers. We should have named our high school that instead of the Chaparrals, but whatever. But the point is that it is, and if you think about it now, if this election goes in in November, they're not going to see a dime of revenue until 2023. You'll get some in late December 2022, but they're not going to see a dime of revenue until 2023. They'll be on the same kind of budget cycle y'all are from October 1 to September 30th. So they're going to have to get covered during that time. You may, if you want to cut them off, the argument, and you've heard my argument, is that, well, they're all still paying the taxes, right?
Sure.
So you try to make it even. But at some point, you may want to say, look, we just can't do this anymore. You get enough unfunded mandates as it is. But you're looking at a 3-year plan before any of this comes to fruition, if we started it today. So we do need to be kind of looking in the future, and I'm not trying to sell it to you. Look, folks, I'm trying to give you information. I do believe in them, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But you're talking a long-term process here. And you got Lake Granbury, you got a lot of things going for you. Plus, you're going to be like Parker County ESD 1. Everybody wants to live in Aledo. They don't want a Fort Worth address. Okay, but Fort Worth is trying their best to get in there, and everybody else is trying to block them. And my point is that we're still having the demand. The Dean Ranch is getting developed. All these places are getting developed now, and we can't keep up with it. And we've got these. So,
And don't get me wrong, I'm not for or against it. It's you guys that sell it. I'm just trying to understand it. When people ask me these questions, I don't know. So that's why I ask you, because I don't know. But definitely, that's going to be your sale, not ours if we get it on the petition.
Sell it to our citizens, or giving the opportunity. feel
Right.
comfortable, we can do that.
Got it. Okay.
That's all we ask, is that you let it go to a vote. That's what, you can be against it. That's fine. I feel like if it goes to a vote, we can spread our message and get it. If they vote it down, then, it gets voted down.
Got it.
I feel positive.
Mr. Mills, our county attorney would like to say
Can
something.
I just kind of address why we have two commissioners in the hallway and what happened real quick? And I don't want anybody to get in trouble, but can I just do that real quick, Judge?
Sure,
I got a
sure.
meeting to get to. Okay, so in case y'all are wondering why we have two commissioners sitting in the hallway, what happened was the posting requirement for open meetings is that since the last 100 years, it's outside on the bulletin board outside the courthouse, which we did. We complied with that. There's this newer statute that says if we have a website, we're supposed to put it on the website also in addition to being outside the courthouse, which I got a call from the judge last night about 9 o'clock, and I'm trying to get an answer turned around real quick, and I look on the government code and it says posted outside the courthouse. We did. I said, okay, I think we're good, Judge. Then there's this other section that was added more recently that says we're supposed to post on the internet, which we didn't do because we were shut down last week. So the folks out in the two in the hallway may want to ask some questions later. Most of their questions have been answered already by other folks in the audience. But there is an exception to the posting on the internet that says if you've made a good faith attempt to comply with the requirements and your failure was due to a technical problem beyond the control of the governmental body, then you're okay. So y'all can read it that way, and I don't want the three of y'all to be in any trouble with people, Hood County News or whoever. So if you say, look, we had rolling blackouts, the county was shut down, the roads were bad, all that, so we couldn't post it on the internet last week, due to a technical problem beyond your control, but they're trying to say, well, we want to be on the safe side and we don't want a quorum. And anyway, so I understand where they're coming from and where y'all are coming from, but they are here, they're in the hallway, and they may ask some questions later. So I just want to get that on the record because I got to get to a meeting. Is that?
You know that we're not going to vote on anything.
Right.
We're going to be safe, and that's why I said, I thought it was, because it was sent out like normal channels, because like you said, the whole county was shut down. A lot of
Right.
electricity was off. We couldn't get a lot of stuff off. So I think we are operating in that, and that's when I
Yeah.
called you
Okay.
last night at 9 on the deal. You checked. You
Yeah.
said we're fine because it has been posted out at the bulletin board in
Right.
front of the courthouse since February the 8th. So it's been out there
Yeah.
in the bulletin
Oh.
board since February the 8th.
Okay,
And I
that's-
thought it was important to get this information.
Yeah.
Since
Oh, definitely,
everybody was planning
yeah.
on coming up here
Yeah.
anyway.
So I just want to get that on the
Well, thank you.
record. So I
did a
partially to
good-
blame for, not getting that last night, but I'm glad we're having the meeting and getting the info out there.
Yeah.
I got to get to another deal, but thank y'all real quick.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mills.
Do y'all, I don't want to get to the rolling form before Mr. Mills leaves. Maybe we switch some people out in case they have some questions, or I'll go out in the hall and visit with them after this, whatever you think is best.
Yeah, we talked about that. I mean, to switch out and answer questions, I mean, for them to feel good about it, it would need to be not a quorum. So the three of them would need to vacate, and they could come in and ask questions on the record if you want, while the folks are still here. However y'all want to do that, but, I don't want to impose on them.
I'll go out in the hall.
Yeah. Okay, so, anyway, thank y'all.
Hear their questions and answers.
Well, you can stay,
Yes.
Yeah.
Walk out in the hall, or they can call it a day, because that won't be a forum.
Well, I told Kevin, I said, if you got any questions you want me to get on the record, I'll try to get them for you. And he texted me a list of questions, and while I was sitting here for the last hour, those were all asked. So, I mean, I think everything that he wanted to know has been asked by Eddie and other people here. So, they can watch the tape and get those answers, I think, hopefully.
I'll be glad to answer.
I have no more questions either. I'll tell you what we're going to do, since everybody else is here from all over the county deal, and since you've given me this slightly of a deal, I'm going to read this and condense it down into 3 or 4 pages while I'm out. So
Just have one and tab 2 is all you need to do.
that's right. Just that one up there. And so I thank y'all all very much for coming. This has been very educational. I really appreciate this. This is a serious question, and all the voters of Hood County need to be very, very well informed of what the ramifications are and what they're voting on. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and call a brief recess at about 3 minutes to 11, and let Commissioner Andrews and Commissioner Eagle come here, and the three of us will go ahead and leave.
Floor's yours.
I know it's awkward when a lawyer shuts up.
Some of the questions were the same about continued use of county equipment. I guess Commissioner Andrews had asked about some creation of the ESD, that if it didn't pass in 2 areas and then the one area did pass with a sustainable amount of money, how do you go about abolishing
Well,
that area?
well, you don't do that. Let me answer that question. So let's say, and that's what I was talking about with the 4 elections in one, basically. Let's say it passes overall, which I can't imagine mathematically how that would work, but it fails in DCB, it fails in DCB's ETJ, and it fails in, what else do we have? And there's any unincorporated area there is. So that only leaves the Granbury ETJ area, the Akron area, I guess, basically, right? Okay, so then it would probably be a rough state, it wouldn't do any good. That's what y'all have to determine after the public hearing is, let's say it does fail there or there. Will it be a rough state? And if it is, then you probably need to deny the petition, okay? And I'll give you an example. I didn't get too far down this with the Bastrop County. Looking at, for clarification, are you saying after?
Saying after the election?
No, sir.
Okay.
You're not part of the statute. Yeah.
You did good, Steve. Apparently have some spare time on your hands.
All right, so here's what the law says. If the proposed district, and I'm going to read out loud, I may not be reading the right spot yet. but I'm
Okay.
getting there. All right. If the proposed district will include territory in the municipal limits or extraterritorial jurisdiction of one or more municipalities, the Commissioner of Court of the county in which the municipality is located must determine if the district would still meet the requirements prescribed by subsection A, which I'll come back to, if the territory in the municipality's limits or ETJ is excluded from the district. The Commissioner's Court must make this finding for each municipality, the territory of which will be included in the district. And then A says, if after the hearing, the Commissioner's Court finds the creation of a district is feasible and will promote public safety, welfare, health, and convenience of persons residing in the proposed districts, the Commissioner's Court shall, you must grant the petition. Fix the district's boundaries, so you could theoretically leave something out. You can't add to it because those people haven't petitioned for it, so that'd be unfair. Fix the district boundaries and impose any conditions under 775-014H, which only applies to Bear County, so don't worry about that. So basically, what y'all need to decide is after the public hearing, and what you hear, because I assume the public hopefully will come and voice their druthers one way or the other, whether to grant the petition or not. And to give you a practical example of that, if I talk too much, tell me to shut up, but the practical example was when Bastrop County ESD 1 was created, we had City of Austin ETJ, we had Creedmoor ETJ, we had Mustang Ridge, territorial limits and ETJ, and then we had just Bastrop ETJ, and then we had just unincorporated areas of Bastrop County that encompassed the whole area, which was basically the eastern side of the county, all the way to Travis County, and to Hays County down below. The point of the story is the Commissioner's Court of Bastrop County let it go through. Well, nobody voted in the ETJ of Creedmoor, so it did not pass there. And that's a very small amount, relatively speaking. 2 people voted in the ETJ and city limits of Mustang Ridge, and it was 1-1. So we passed that. Okay, everywhere else was created, and you may be familiar with this, you may not, but and this is very common down around Austin because nobody wants to be Austin, is you can opt yourself into somebody else's extraterritorial jurisdiction, and especially if you're not in that, otherwise they have to release. But so it's a patchwork quilt west of Bastrop of people who have opted into the Bastrop ETJ, okay, to be out of the Austin ETJ when they get there. So it passed in the Austin ETJ as well. So my point is that's what you're going to have to determine as a commissioner when we actually have a public hearing, and whether it's at that meeting or a later meeting for this specific purpose, then y'all will determine, well, if DCB's out, it's obviously not going to work, right? But you're going to have to just kind of let that go if you think DCB's in. I mean, they're obviously going to be in the fact that they will, I assume, consent. We haven't got the word yet. But the point is that if any of those other areas fail, but it passes overall, you've got the main part of the tax base with DCB. Is that a fair statement, gentlemen? All right, so that would not be a wrong state. And we can always go back and annex later, not unilaterally, but they would petition us to be annexed, and we have a vote. As I explained earlier, and I'm sorry, but let's say the Acton area, it failed, then they could petition then again, and they don't even have to get the city's permission at this point. We only have to get the city's consent for creation, not for annexation. So people could annex Granbury if they voted for it, but it's not going to happen. The point is, Acton could come back and petition with 50 registered voters on real property, and then we would decide, as the ESD Commission first would decide, do we go to a vote on this, and then the Acton people have to say yes, and the existing ESD people have to say yes. So it's like double secret rotation and fraternity.
Okay, the Acton people being city leaders, or it's put to a vote on a ballot?
No,
Okay.
the voters.
All right. Okay.
Because that's what would happen is if we were going to annex them, they would do a petition because they're in a defined area outside of the district. They would do the petition, we would grant the petition or deny it. And if we granted it, then we'd go to an election that we'd pay the county clerk to conduct. And if the Acton people said yes and the ESD people said yes, then they would do it.
Okay.
And like I said, we could theoretically annex Granbury. It's not going to happen because the Granbury folks will probably vote against it. If 50 people put together a petition, we could annex Tarrant County.
So I got a question on 775-017 petition approval. You got any case law on what feasible means?
No, sir. In fact, if there's case law, I've got it in the back of tab 9. This statute doesn't have a lot of case law that interprets what it means. Sometimes I put it in there. I don't know if it's in there. There may be a couple of cases, but it's pretty straightforward. But that's up to y'all, and so I guess it's very discretionary. So that's what I would be personally concerned about is if you know DCB itself fails, and I can't see that's where the population base is too. So if it fails there, it's going to fail overall. I have had one states, you know, where like I said with Bastrop County, I had one. What was that? I had one that was created. It was just one city with their ETJ. I'm trying to think of what this was. I think this was in. Well, it was Crockett, Houston County. And it wasn't Crockett, but another city voted yes. The county people voted yes, but that donut around the city didn't vote. And so we had a donut around the deal. We went back and fixed it. It took us a year because we have to get creative, and we have to have a petition, and then we have to go to an election. We have to have money to pay for the election. But so there is no case law that determines feasible. Y'all have absolute discretion on what you think is feasible.
So on this petition that was filed, it accepts the EMS. I'm sure y'all have covered this, so I'm sorry if you got. But it accepts out EMS, and my understanding is, and I'm kind of a novice at this, but the EMS side of it is where most of the calls, one of the things I hear is we get 2,000 calls a year, we get 2,500 calls a year, and if you ask them to break that down, it seems like most calls are regarding EMS. So my question is, how does that play into your petition, which is only to create it just fire?
Okay, we'll provide emergency services except for, no, this is emergency ambulance services. This is not first responder. We're still doing EMS like we've always done as far as first responder. It's my understanding, and these guys can correct me, but that's already covered by the county.
The ambulance services.
I already covered that, so we're leaving that out. Now, we could create another one if we wanted to, and I'm not saying, you know, I don't want to go too far down the road, but theoretically, you could get EMS off your plate too, because you could create an ESD just for EMS. That's what we're leaving you open for the whole county, including Granbury, and then you can give up EMS and turn that all over to the ESD. So that's why we're leaving that out. It's just emergency ambulance transport. If you look at tab 1 in my book, and I'm sorry,
I don't have a book.
I know you don't have a book, I'm sorry, but it's the constitutional provision, and what it says in here is just so you'll know. Such a district may provide emergency medical services, emergency ambulance services, rural fire prevention and control services, or other emergency services authorized by the legislature. So that's what we specifically accepted was emergency ambulance services, because we don't do it now. And unless the county has a plan, you already got a good plan, and you may not believe this, but I'll tell you this today, a county-run EMS is better than anything you can have. Are they contract, y'all contract?
Ours is private, but it's a city.
It's a non-profit.
It's contract, so that's the second best thing you can have.
It's a
Because you have to
non-profit
control it.
contract. They don't contract.
Not contracted, no. Now,
It just doesn't. It's just,
501c3,
Subsidized by the
hospital.
do what?
Subsidized by the hospital.
not anymore. It's not even that anymore.
They did 300,000 last year.
Do y'all don't have a hospital district though here, do you?
Yes.
The hospital district is not subsidizing the hospital. They're
Oh.
under contract with the county.
Yeah.
They've got to provide EMS service to the county.
Okay. Because some hospital districts have exclusive jurisdiction over EMS, pre-hospital emergency services like Lubbock County Hospital District, but some don't, and they don't really do indigent health care and stuff like that.
That's the road here is indigent.
Right. All right, did I answer that well enough, or do you need more information?
No, and I want to do a follow, I found an article here that came out about Hunt County years ago, said no. Did they ever come back to it?
I'm doing it right now, yes, sir. In fact, y'all are the two on my plate right now. And so the problem with Hunt County is, it's not a problem. The difference with Hunt County and Hood County is we're talking about two discrete areas out of the county, whereas Hunt County, the Firefighters Association got together and they're doing the entire county with the exception of, and I'm trying to do this from memory, but definitely Greenville and Commerce, and I think the city of Caddo Mills, maybe? I don't know, one of those, they've all opted out. They don't want to be in it because they've got municipal fire departments. And they don't want to be in, but they want their ETJ in because they can get contract money from the ESD to run outside of their city. And the county gets out of the business. I don't know if the county's for it. They didn't vote it down. What happened was, and this is about 10 years ago now, is we went to the public hearing and not surprisingly, some of the fire departments were against it. The cities were for it. They wanted to get out of the fire department business. The county, I don't know if they were for or against it, but some of the VFDs were against it. And that was poor planning on the Firefighters Association's part, because then the county commissioners looked at it and said, I'm not going to, if these guys are against it, I'm not going to vote for it. So they denied the petition. So we're going back and doing it right now, and we're looking at having our public hearing probably in May.
Yeah, this shows 2009, so that's been going on for 11, 12 years then.
Well, yeah, I mean, I won't say it's been going on. It went on then, and then it wasn't talked about again until they called me again and said, we're going to give it another shot, and that was last year. And in fact, we would have already been down the road on that and already had the election except for COVID, because we couldn't do the public hearing because we had planned for early February, because the deadline to call the election in this case is February 12th for May, but we're not there. We missed that, which we knew we would. But last year in 2020, COVID hit, and it was, I mean, like that week that everybody stopped having meetings. And so we put it off till now.
Let me go back to the EMS thing, just to be sure I'm clear on this. There is language in there that excludes that ESD from anything EMS. So the ESD...
No, not anything EMS, just...
No, ambulatory, yes. So in other words, that ESD can't at some date in the future come in and contract individually within that ESD for ambulance services the way that it is currently.
Voters have authorized now.
Okay.
And there's not a legal mechanism to do this now. I guess theoretically, we could go back and have the legislature change it where we could have a second election on whether we were going to provide EMS transport services. But right now, the county's doing that, so we left that out specifically because the county's already doing it. We don't want to trade into your territory. We want to do what we're already doing. But it leaves it open for us to come back with a plan later on if something changes, like a second ESD. I'll give you an example. Small county, there's 3 ESDs in Travis County now that have a fire ESD and an EMS ESD. So they're paying like 20 cents. Now, they all contract with the same thing. We've gotten, and I don't know how to say this, we've gotten so big and so populous that we can't do it on 10 cents anymore. When the voters decided to go ahead and do the EMS, we actually didn't have this limiting language in our petition when we were created back in the 80s or the 60s or whenever it was. We were just created so we could do all of those. So the statute says that if we give up one of those services to the other ESD. You can't create an ESD on top of an ESD that provides the same service. So we all gave up ambulance transport to these new ESDs, and then our citizens came back and said, yes, we want this enhanced service. And that's Pflugerville, Pedernales, which is Spicewood area, and Lago Vista, Village of the, I can't think of the other cities, Jonestown, and I can't think of the other city out there. They wanted it, and they got their own EMS service. We still have Travis County EMS out there too. We're enhancing them because we only got one ambulance out there. You got to go to Williamson County or go all the way around, and it's 2-hour transport time unless you go by helicopter. And so we bring our ambulances in service when Austin goes out of service. Take information. So I'll raise it, I'm sure.
Well, can you give me the Reader's Digest version on one of the things that, told her specifically, talked about is, hey, these taxpayers, if this ESD is approved, the taxpayers in that ESD are still paying county taxes.
Yes.
So could you give me the Reader's, I know you already answered that, but where is it on, can the county fund into an ESD?
Yes.
And
as long as you're enhancing service, there's actually an Attorney General's opinion in tab 9, and I'll give you the book here in a minute. But in tab 9 of the book, and I can send it to you, is there's an Attorney General's opinion that says, yes, the county can do an interlocal agreement with an ESD to provide them money for enhanced services or a different service. So let me give you some concrete examples. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but in Williamson County, in Parker County, once they started ESDing up, they couldn't discontinue the money to the 2 or 3 people who'd done the thing that they needed to do and form an ESD. Because the county, just to give you an idea, Parker County wanted ESDs. They wanted out of the fire business. They got plenty of things to spend their money on. So they wanted out, but they were having volunteer fire departments that didn't want to do it. So they finally said, okay, fine, next year you're not getting any money, so sort it out. And so that's what they forced them into. But for a while after that, and same thing in Williamson County, same thing in Burnett County, the county still provided money, but we called it mutual aid money. In other words, the subsidy was now going to make sure that everybody worked together. We talked about that because Granbury is very concerned, everybody's concerned that they're all working together. And so we turned it into mutual aid money that offset the cost of gas and everything that they had to do and expendable products and whatever of going out and mutual aiding each other. You can also do it for providing something else, but I'm not sure what that would be.
workers' comp and vehicle insurance?
Yeah, I've seen even Travis County, I'm a volunteer there, even Travis County continue to pay for all the volunteers their workers' comp. Even though we had to pay for our paid staff once we started getting paid staff. Travis County didn't cover that. So I know you'll give them other benefits, but we can work through that.
But ultimately, though, it's also because we're still told to be at the 501c3.
Right, you're not contacting with ESD per se. Now, but the issue is, and I think that's what the commissioner's doing, is we're paying an extra 10 cents, and we're still getting county money. We're doing good, which is fine. That's the whole point, to enhance. These guys got to sell it. They got to do the heavy lifting. You guys aren't for it or against it. We'll certainly be against it. You can be for it if you want. But the bottom line is you're just letting their citizens vote whether they want this 10-cent, potential 10-cent tax. I don't know what it's going to be. We don't know what it's going to be. We can assume because the opposition is going to say it's going to be 10 cents, right? They're going to make the worst case scenario. So, but we don't know what those 5 commissioners that you guys point will ultimately do. I don't know if they've even got a number in mind. I will tell you this, in Parker County ESD3, the biggest problem we had was our fire chief put the pencil down and did the numbers and said, we need 5 cents to just maintain, we need 5 cents to not only maintain what we got, but to also build up our reserves, because we've got to have reserves, and we can't just go out there and spend all of our money. So we've got to build up reserves, and we've got to, and to enhance the service, we'll need 5 cents. And that's what he sold it on. Well, a couple of things happened to turn him into an inadvertent liar, in that one, the estimates that we got from the CAD left out a big chunk of our property. And so what happened was when we got creative, we ended up having to have a higher tax rate because our reverse license, they included stuff that wasn't in there in the estimate, so we had to have a higher tax rate right off the bat that, plus the 5 new commissioners came in and said, here's what we want to do. We want to build these 2 new stations and all this, so they went straight to the 10 cents. Well, that made Hudson Oaks a little upset. It made that county commissioner a little upset, because you told us you do it on 5. So that's what I'm saying is that these guys should not, in my opinion, go out there and say, well, we'll do it for 5. Because number one is, we're talking about 5 people who don't exist yet. So just go with the 10 cents, because that's what the opponents are going to say, and then let that district sort it out. And they got to deal with SB2 just like y'all. So they're going to have a hard time. If they set it at 5 cents, they're going to have a hard time getting to 6 ever.
Well, it does seem to be a sticky, sometimes like trying to unfurl a ball of tape, where there's apparently some language in there that can be interpreted as, if the ESD fixes a truck, it's our truck.
No. What the statute says is that anything we buy, we own. Same thing with the county. Y'all own those tenders. It may even be titled in their name. And there's case law out on this one that says basically you pay for it, and this is true. It's called a resulting trust, okay? Is if I bought Commissioner Eagle a house, right? But he's got the deed in his name, but I pay for it, guess whose house it is? Mine. Absent him being my child, then it's presumed to be a gift. It's called a constructive or resulting trust. I paid for it. For whatever reason, I didn't want to put the title in my name. Now, I may have to take him to court, but I'm going to win because I paid for it. Okay? So y'all own, you can't give it away as a county either. You own all that stuff. The ESD, the VFD will come in with whatever they want. If they want to transfer it all to the ESD and let the ESD take over all the maintenance and everything, sure, no problem. Okay? But the bottom line is in my contract, just so they know, and I've told them this, my contract's going to say, if you ever go away, if we ever fire you for whatever reason, all your stuff becomes our stuff. Period, end of story. Because not one thing, and I'm going to say it real loud so everybody can hear, and everybody can disagree with me outside, volunteer fire departments have never paid for a thing ever in their life. Ever. Donations, county money, federal money, state money have run through your checking account, but you haven't paid a dime for anything. All right? So I don't want that fire station in Toller, if he gets pissed off and decides that he doesn't like the way things are going, it's not going to be turned into a Jiffy Lube. It's going to stay there for what the citizens donated the money for, what you guys paid the money for, what the state paid. So that's what my contract says. Does the state law say that? No. But if we put a roof on that station, we now own that roof. A roof is a hard thing to take off a station. And if we go south with each other, and my contract is a prenuptial agreement. It tells you how the divorce is going to go, and the political subdivision of the state of Texas is going to win. Okay? So that's very plain, and I've told them that. But that stuff is going to stay there for the benefit of the citizens. It's not going to be turned in because Ken Campbell gets ticked off. And this happened up in ESD 6 with Tin Top, and I can't remember the name of the other, Horseshoe Bend. They tried to run off a year after and say, you can't tell us what to do, shut up and give us the money. And we said, no, we're a political subdivision of the state of Texas. We're not your rich uncle. And you're going to give us a budget, and here's what we're going to do, and here's our plan. And they said, we don't want to do that. And one of them devolved down to a family doing it. But bottom line is we said, okay, fine, contract's over. All your stuff becomes our stuff. They didn't believe us. I walked into court on December 28th because they wanted to go sell that brand new tender that we just bought. And I walked into court, and the judge looked at me and looked at him and said, come back in my chambers. And he said, that fire truck's not going anywhere. I didn't even have to hear Mr. Campbell's argument. It's staying right here. And so, yes, if things go south, the citizens are going to win. But there's nothing in the law that says their stuff becomes our stuff. If we pay for it, we own it no matter how it's titled.
Kind of sounds like the same thing. That yeah.
That's the way I make it. But bottom line is tomorrow, and that's the thing, they're only a fire department because right now, that guy and you guys say they're the fire department.
Right.
They can call themselves whatever they want. They can own whatever they want, but it's dispatch them. Based on their response districts and the contracts you have with them, they're nothing. So I can be Ken Campbell's fire department all I want. But if nobody's dispatching me, I'm just an officious intermeddler that's subject to arrest. So the bottom line is that you guys decide, the district decides. And again, the law says they can walk away tomorrow with all their stuff. But we're going to tell the sheriff who to dispatch. and it's probably not gonna be them. We may have to remake the whole wheel and go find some place to put trucks and buy trucks and all that stuff. But that's what I'm trying to do with the contract, not the law. Now, whether that district contracts with me as to be the attorney, whether they go and agree with me on my contract, is gonna be a different thing. So it doesn't all automatically become the districts. I've had a lot of ESDs, the second they get an ESD, in fact, ESD 1, whenever anybody wants to be annexed into it, which is too late now because they've all been, the whole county's basically an ESD, in an ESD, is we told them, Easter and the other one right now, we said, you can come in, but you're gonna sign an agreement right now that says, if we annex you, all your stuff becomes our stuff. And they said, fine, we need the money, we need the help, we're happy. But that's a contractual issue, not a legal issue. And again, the only reason I do it is because I've seen too many people try to walk off with fire trucks. So.
And we're probably in agreement on this. Like, no, I don't care who, as long as we can use it.
Yeah.
And for the, what we all want to do to protect life and property, I don't care who. As long as they let us use it, it doesn't matter to me.
Well, you know, I'm on 2 different fire departments. I still get to drive the truck. I still get this, you know, the bunker gear, so I'm happy. And I don't have to worry about, well, I'm a commissioner, one, so, but I do have to worry about the budget, but the other one I don't.
And ultimately, I don't even care if I'm there anymore. If they come in, we get everything going, and then hey, we're getting rid of all, you know what? The money we're bringing in the future, it's gonna go towards public safety. It's not at the whim of county commissioners or anybody else. It has to go towards.
You see, they're gonna bring in an additional, assuming the county, everything stays the same, which may or may not. You know, donations are gonna go down, I think, because people are paying taxes now. They don't necessarily want to pay a donation too. They do, they do the write-off. But, and they can do the write-off of the ESD or the volunteer fire department. But they're asking for $350,000 more, and they're gonna have to sell this to enhance the services they already provide. That you guys have done a great job of helping them provide a mental service. And these guys have all heard it, but we're talking about polishing a diamond here, not remaking the wheel. And so they believe they have, and especially it's a long-term thing, they believe that, well, and I know for a fact that they're not going to see any money until 2023 if we went in November.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everybody's going to have to continue to do what they do till sometime after that time. And so, but this is a long-term plan with growth coming in and stuff like that. And we can all argue about who's going to grow first, who's going to grow what, but I think they all are going to grow. And so this is, what we don't want to do is try to create an ESD 5 years after we need it. And, you know, you can argue about whether we need it now or not, but that's up to the voters to decide if it goes to a vote, would be my opinion.
Is there a mechanism to merge ESDs? One thing that I've talked to other counties is, you know, I sat down with well, I'll just say a judge of another county, and
well, if you don't mind telling me, if you don't want to, that's fine, but I may know the county, I may know the actual issues.
yeah, I don't want to say, you know, he didn't give me permission to throw his name out on that, but, you know, and he adamantly sat there and said, I don't think this would work to have multiple ESDs. It's a countywide ESD that they're working with, and, you know, and
I represent Johnson County and Hill County, for example, and they're countywide ESDs. Parker County's different because it's got 8 ESDs. If I were, you know, and I was involved in creation of some of them I was not. There are these historical, and I don't know how to say, accidents and loyalties.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys have heard it again, that if I were in Travis County, there would probably be 4 ESDs instead of 12. But, you know, they started in 61, and Westlake did theirs first, and they just wanted to be Westlake people. In fact, we're all in the East School District, but we were the poor cedar choppers, so they didn't want us in the district. They wouldn't let us, so we had to go create our own. And we got $40,000 a year out of it after 10 years of its existence. But the point is that that's one of the things I was saying earlier to everybody here, is that these guys they're jumping over the rope here to see where they get and what they do, and somebody's got to go through the mirror first. But that's what they're trying to do, and they got a plan for their citizens, but that does not mean that we don't form another ESD. And yes, the short answer is yes, they can merge, and we have been working on mergers in Travis County. There are still some historic I hate yous out there. You know, Garfield, even though they're not incorporated, hates Elroy, even though they're not incorporated. They all go to the Del Valley School District, you know, and but they're all in one ESD, but I guess Pflugerville and Manor would be a better example. Or even the reason that, and I told these guys about the northeast part of Travis County, the New Sweden area, and over, they consider themselves Elginites. They're smack dab in Travis County on the northeast side, but they consider themselves Elginites or Copelanders. And they didn't want to be with Manor or Pflugerville. So they got a $26,000 a year ESD, barely can pay their bills, and then pay somebody to come put out their fires. We still have to run the calls, because they just can't do it.
I guess you're a big proponent of local control, as far as government. So what better way of local control? Toller's ESD has a board member of 5 people that own property in Toller's fire response area. It's not 5 people from Bay Cordova or Pecan or Crescent making decisions for the west half of Hood County. Same as if Lipan created theirs, or if Lipan decided they wanted to join Toller's, then that's great.
And yes, they can merge, and that's what Parker County ESD 1 has essentially done. They haven't necessarily merged ESDs, but they started out in Springtown, and they went Reno, and I can't remember all the other little cities, down along the eastern side of Parker County. ESD 3 was around Weatherford already, but they got all the Anettas, Aledo, and then ESD 6 was there for that whole Spring Creek area and the old Tin Top and Horseshoe Bend area and stuff. And then you've got Brock Dennis, which, they consider themselves, they almost want to consider themselves Parker County people. I think they consider themselves Palo Pinto County people, but they're in Parker County. So
We
it just,
had the discussion, but this is not a new conversation. We've been having this conversation for 4 years about how to establish long-term funding and how to better provide for the citizens. We kicked around the idea of county ESD for a multitude of reasons.
Well, and maybe the time for that's not right, but if the time is right in the future, is there still a mechanism to make that happen?
That's why we ended up where we are now. Ken has said it best, let us tear down the brick wall and everyone wants to join. I'm not saying that you can't.
well, let's see, I'm sorry, I'll give you another anecdote, but 9 and 10, ESD 9 and ESD 10, I'm a firefighter on both those. Okay, I'm an assistant chief of one, a lieutenant the other, I'm commissioner at ESD 10. But back when cities had the ability to unilaterally annex, okay, Austin was eating up, and we had Westlake and Rollingwood, 2 little cities, that it was eating up everything around it. Took Lost Creek, took some of our best areas. We're going to take the whole peninsula out, Westlake Drive, and all this stuff. Fortunately, that didn't happen. But my point is that we're all in the Eanes School District. 9 and 10 should be one fire department. We, as a practical matter, function as one fire department. But because of historic, we're the poor people, and they're the rich people, we didn't get included right off the bat. Are we going to merge? Yeah, we talked about it 10 years ago. But that's when Westlake was going to get eat up, and all they're going to be left with was Westlake and Rollingwood with a very small tax base. And they said, well, we want y'all to merge in with us, and we were probably being a little horsey, but we said, no, when Austin's through with you, we'll take what's left. And so that was sort of a, historic hatred kind of thing. But, we haven't done it. We're not really worried about it because now we have no jurisdictional boundaries. The closest unit goes, and so we cover most of their Western African district. They paid us money to cover the River Hills area because they couldn't get to it from their station. And it was outside their 5-mile radius, so the ISO rating was lower, so we did an interlocal agreement to get the insurance premiums decreased there. And we run all the way out to Bears and Lane. I know this means nothing to you, but that's running very far west back towards Austin. So
I guess that's something we had discussed previously this week. I feel that the answer coming from you would be better than me telling him about, not that we can sell the ESD on improved ISO ratings and lower insurance rates, but you said that they can save up to 30% on their insurance.
well, I don't know if it's going to be a total 30%, and it depends on what's going on at the time. And it depends on where you go. But we were able to give money back to our taxpayers because we went from a 6.9 split rating to a 2, and we're about to go to a 1. And that put about a net and the numbers have changed a little bit because our average property value was $250,000, so they would pay about $250 a year in taxes. But we got an average of $300 decrease in property value, and insurance premiums from going from that 6 to that 2. So I put $50 a year, every year in my taxpayer's pocket by doing that. Now things have changed a little bit, the dynamics changed, because now the average property value is like $750. The houses haven't changed, just the appraisals have changed. So it's about $750. So now they're paying about $750 a year on the average house. Are they still getting more than $750? I don't know. We haven't run the numbers. But they're still paying less than $750 when you look at it, because they're not paying as much in insurance premium. But I've told them, and we don't want to sell it on that because 50% of it's water that we have no control over, y'all have no control over, communications, various different sundry things, but we can work with a goal, if we have the money, to buy the apparatus that we need to buy and make sure we, improve and enhance what we can to lower our ISO rating.
Well, money fixes a lot of problems.
It creates a lot too.
Obviously that's a big part of the deal. But I am concerned that, and I think I've been pretty open with everybody in here. I'm concerned that people are going to say, "Hey, look, magic pill, take this thing," and my property insurance, homeowners insurance, takes a dive, and it's, hey, I can give $300 to the insurance company or $300 to the fire department. Everybody's going to make that decision the same every time. And that's...
That would be a long-term plan, at least 5 years, if we had it in November, before they could get anywhere on that. They might, and they probably are, I'm assuming they're probably looking at, because historically what happened was we used to be on the key rate system, so we got basically whatever Granbury had for all of us. Rating. And then we went off, we were the last state to go off in 97, we went off the key rate and we went to the ISO. So all of us just got arbitrarily assigned, like a 4 or a 6 or a 10. Nobody went out there and really saw what kind of things we have. So it's an historic accident that a lot of the VFDs are going back, and yes, we can't control the water supply, but we haven't been reviewed since it happened in 97, and we might be able to knock it from a 6 to a 5, which might be 5% off, or whatever it is, 1%, whatever it is. So they're going to probably be in that process anyway, but it also costs money to get the consultants in to do your analysis and figure out what you need, and then take it to the ISO and take it to the state fire marshal's office and get it done. A lot of people have to use consultants. You can do it yourself, we did, but it's a tough road to hoe.
All right, on the...
What I'm saying is that they should not be selling it on ISO rating, because that's...
No, I think that I've, from the people that I've talked to, I know I've spent more time talking to Matt, or talking to Toller, and they're being careful not to make it sound that way. Okay, on the flip side of merging, if this thing is a disaster, can you kill it?
Yes. Yes.
What mechanism is that? The same as it was implemented?
I think it's 50. I think it's 50, though. I can look it up real quick.
That's okay. I don't think we need to know the specifics. There just is a mechanism.
Granted or denied, but they go to vote again. If the citizens say we don't want it, then we go through basically a corporate dissolution process where we liquidate the assets of the ESD, sell things off, and then if there's any money left over after all that's done, it goes back proportionally to the taxpayers, whatever money's left over to what they pay. And I'll give you an example. The only time I've ever heard that contemplated was in Van Zandt County. And I can't remember which one it was. It may have been 1, it may have been 4. I think it was 4. I still represent them, but the county commissioner was very much against it. The commissioner's court approved the petition. He opposed it. It still got passed. And then he immediately appointed, because they do sort of a senatorial kind of thing, where if it's all in your district, in your commissioner's precinct, we'll vote for it, but you tell us who you want, you know what I mean? Because I don't get in your business, you don't get in mine. You don't tell me to appoint over here. But that's kind of how they did it informally. So he got 5 people who were against the district appointed to the board. And they immediately started working on getting a petition together to dissolve it. One thing they forgot was they still got to set a tax rate because they got to pay for the election, because now they're a separate political subdivision. So once we got them to understand you got to set a tax rate, set it at 1 cent. We don't care, if you're not going to give it to the fire departments, but while you're here, why not? So anyway, they got the petition wrong twice. It took them 2 years, finally went to a vote, it passed again 70-80, and that commissioner got unelected. Now, I'm not saying that as a story to scare y'all or anything, but I mean, that's just what I'm saying. Is that's the only time that I know of where somebody tried to dissolve a district. and it didn't work out. But will it work out somewhere else? Yes, you can do that.
Kevin, Commissioner Eagle, you guys may have heard this, but I know you're familiar with the numbers, but I want to give you our particular situation. In 2009, we made 316 calls for the year. 2020, we made 1,096. That's a 250% growth rate in that 10, 11 years. You go out another 10 years, that equals about 3,800 calls a year. And we can't do that with 29 volunteers and a $100,000 budget. We just can't. So for my money, if that's the fund, this is not a vote about today. It's a vote about 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road to make sure that we can provide adequate fire protection for our citizens. But, again, it's not a vote about today. It's a vote about down the road. And you guys know better than I about the growth. You know what we're looking at.
And even in total, we ran just under 400 calls last year right now. We're saying in records February. So, and that was, and you say, oh, well, ice storm caused a bunch of wrecks, we got to find ice storm. So, I mean, that's just regular calls from service. So, it's every year we've seen that.
I'll get so lucky through the ice storm. I think I was out 5 times that one day. Guess maybe that's it. Okay, let me boy, I almost said circle back, and that is not something to say right now. But on the voting situation, say just for instance, De Cordova said no. I mean, during the election, the citizens of De Cordova said no at such a rate that it overrode the overall. Does that kill the whole thing, or is it all still compartmentalized? Okay.
Then it's got to pass by a majority within those discrete areas. So if it failed into Cordova, if I understand what you're saying, if it failed into Cordova, more than likely, based on population, it's going to fail overall, which means it's not going to be created at all. Right. The worst thing that could happen is, and I don't think it would, but I don't know the demographics enough. These gentlemen can think about it. That's something that they have to talk with you about. But I would think it would be awful if it passed and I'm calling it the Acton area, which is essentially Granbury, ETJ area, and then everything that's not into Cordova is ETJ, or that's not into Cordova, it could pass in ETJ. That would be a kind of unfortunate situation.
Okay, and if that occurred, you said there's a mechanism for going ahead and getting Acton involved. Hasn't that barn, or horse left the barn? Because that, I mean, I'm thinking if I'm sitting there on the outside and I'm still getting, hey, everybody else is paying that 10 cents per, and I don't have to, that's pretty good deal for me.
Well, the ESD, I would say this, if it was created overall and DCB was out, the ESD, number one, can't contract to provide services to an area that's not in its territory. Okay? So these guys would not be getting money to cover DCB. They'd be getting money only to cover those other areas.
Man, and that creates a real sticky, that's the sticky one that I keep going back to. And if Toller's ETJ says no, how do we provide service? Can Toller's Fire Department still contract with the county to cover Toller's ETJ?
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
what happened in Bastrop County, is those areas of Mustang Ridge and Creedmoor that had failed, we told them, sorry, you ain't got any fire service anymore. And ESD 11, which is in Travis County on the other side, said, sorry, you're not getting it from us. It's not in our territory. So y'all better get a petition together, toot sweet. And in the meantime, Bastrop County continued to pay the money for the services for those areas. Now, it took us to get one area because there was really no voters there. There was like those two guys. They never got a petition together. And finally, what happened is 6 or so years ago, after that, a developer was coming in and putting in a development and realized he had no fire service. These two didn't care, right? Realized he had no fire service, so he immediately got people together and put a petition together, and we did an annexation election. So all those areas have now been annexed into Bastrop 1. But it took us 10 years to get it solved. But we did.
two of the areas immediately, as fast as they could get a petition into us, as fast as we were created, we had an election and brought them in.
And the house was on fire in that area? I don't know, burned down.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
Well,
I
and,
feel like y'all run into-
sure.
and runs into Palatine and Campbell.
Sure, yeah, no, I mean, we're gonna, I mean, I understand that, but are we still in control? And if Toller Fire Department can remain a separate entity and still have your own trucks, because the ESD said, well, that house is on fire, you're not taking that truck because that's our ESD truck, you're not taking that in there.
Well,
Yeah.
and that, I'm not going to say
Well,
that happened. Theoretically, we've had to make those kind of threats sometimes. Because, that truck is, and you've had it with, I've had it with cities. Bastrop City had 2 engines that couldn't leave the city, even though they had a county contract, because they didn't want them to leave. I thought it was silly and short-sighted, but that's what they did. Then they had a county truck. All right? The problem is they were all volunteers, so everybody jumped on the county truck for that county call, so they had all the fire trucks in the world and nobody to drive them. You know what I mean? So, it's sort of short-sighted, but yeah, that could happen. The ESD could say, by the way, and I have had one ESD say that because the volunteer fire department was taking our trucks and taking them to Colorado and to the Panhandle to go fight fires and have fun. And we said, wait, we've only got one brush truck, and you've got it where? So yeah, it can happen. But I think, and these guys, I think they've heard it again 90 times today. If I'm the attorney for the district, they're going to be very unhappy and very happy at the same time. I'm not going to ask them to turn over their stuff. They may just do it on their own. It's all a transitional deal anyway. But the bottom line is that the ESD needs to protect its citizens. And we're going to do it through them. I can't imagine trying to restart the wheel with $350,000. So we're going to do it through them, and everybody generally gets along. I've had a couple over the years, maybe 5, where I had to go to court and get stuff back and that kind of stuff. But, you dance with the one that brung you. And it all involves down to personalities anyway.
Well, and I know there is a city and county west of here, not to mention any names, that they don't play together. And it's, our trucks aren't going outside this city to go fight fire over there. And I think somebody may have.
I know y'all don't have the county because y'all are basically Oz on the planet Earth, but I have almost every county that I represent, or where there's an ESD, or I represent a city. The county seat always hates the county, and the county always hates the county seat. I don't understand why that is, but it just is. I'm sure y'all don't have that here, but I can't explain it. But I can see why that happens.
So to go back to a minute ago about equipment and stuff, here's the way I see it happening. I'm anyway off, but over time, the Toller Fire Department becomes the ESD as our trucks wear out, age out of service, the ESD buys a new one, that's the ESD truck. The old one is gone, so over time, we just kind of become the ESD.
All the bunker gear, all the bandages will all become property of the ESD. The only thing that won't would be the volunteers themselves. Most of us volunteer, and I'd volunteer for Satan if he ran my fire department, because I'm not volunteering for him, I'm volunteering for my community. But
That's.
That's apparatus replacement.
Well, no, I'm just talking about specifically like the situation over there where, if it is ending up where the ESD owns everything and they say, hey, you're not going to the ETJ to put, I'm just using that as an example, then, that, and unfortunately, this is a real situation that has actually happened, and I would, very much. No, it's county and a city. Yeah, so Matt will tell you later who it is. He heard him say it out there, but I don't want to see that type of a situation where even the possibility of that is pretty horrible. So I wanted to make sure that is a coverable issue.
When we put these boards in place, we're going to get input from our community people that want to do it. That's your control over that. Get people that you can work with. Because y'all appoint the first board, so don't get somebody.
Well, I think we appoint all the boards. Is it? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Getting started, the first 5 people are appointed by y'all. So that's how you keep that from happening. Let's get people that are interested in and want to do it. That's your input.
Yeah, let me ask you this, there's, because that Is there a different mechanism for that board? Can it be more? Can it be 7 people? Can it be elected? It has to be 5, and they have to be appointed by the Commissioners Court?
If you're in a single county, okay, there are 2 exceptions to that, well, 3 exceptions. One is if your ESD goes into more than one county, then you're elected, mainly because when they created these things in Nebraska, they couldn't figure out how to apportion 5 people between two counties as to how to appoint, who got more, who got less.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, so they're elected. Since then, Harris County passed a law, and it was mainly the ESDs that ultimately liked this because they wanted the county out of their business. They got tired of having the county, and they have, 19 of them, messing with their commissioners. So they said, hell, we'll just be elected. So Harris County elects theirs, all right? Smith County elects theirs for basically the same reason. And they only have 1. Well, they have 2, but Lendell is very small, and then the rest of it covers 3/4 of the county. And then there are certain counties along the intercoastal waterway, or whatever that's called, canal, with a certain population that are elected. And I'll tell you, 2 of them have never had an election because the commissioners still appoint them. Just because, and they want to change the law, they just haven't got.
Run unopposed or whatever, so.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, can everybody hear me okay when I'm talking about this?
And the IT has asked if you stand over here, because if you're over there.
Oh, I forgot we're being recorded. I'm over relaxing here, I'm sorry. I apologize.
So we've been talking a lot about money, trucks, tools, and toys. One of the problems that I know De Cordova is addressing is we can't sustain with volunteers the number of calls that we're running because they're uncompensated or whatever. How do those problems get addressed? If we got all the coolest tools and toys and all that stuff, and we got all this money rolling in to replace all this stuff, how do you address the lack of volunteers if you get to that point where you've only got 6 guys that are ever showing up, if we're still running as a volunteer department?
Well, and I'll let them supplement this, but that's the whole point, is that if we get down to that point where we don't have enough volunteers, we're going to have to hire paid staff. Whether it's during the day, like I said, when we have 25 people at night and nobody during the day, well, that's what they're going to have to do. And with $800,000 or whatever that money amounts to, that's where you start. It's still about $50,000, I think, even in Hood County, to kit a guy out and pay his salaries and benefits and everything like that. So, and the volunteers can't work for the volunteer fire department. We can do stipends. We'd have money for stipends, which would hopefully enhance the volunteers by knowing they're making a little scratch. My eldest son down in San Marcos, I can't remember what they make right now, but I'm going to say $25. It may be $50. So you get a lot of college kids, who will come out there and get trained and learn and volunteer and take the time to be out there. So that's what the money's for. Yes, the toys and tools, but at some point, if you have no volunteers, it doesn't matter what you have. You're going to have to start paying somebody.
Jim, I think some of that money would be earmarked toward retention and recruitment. I think that's what you're talking about. Retention is a big deal, and we don't have anything to put to that.
Right. Such as Granbury has a retirement. That's what keeps their guys coming. You give me the numbers. How many numbers in a month do you have to make to be eligible for?
We maintain basically what the state says you have to do, so it's 25%.
164 calls last year. You had to work.
And they get, when they retire, they get $1,000 a month. It's not a huge amount of
I
money.
don't know if it's 1,000. I think it's more like 50, but.
No, it's more than that.
Pretty decent.
We maxed out ours.
Oh, did you? Okay, good.
Well, because, I can say as a former chief of one of the departments, I know we might have 20, 30 people on the roster, but you're going to have the same 6 that are running the majority of the calls. And so one of the problems that I've always heard when you're going through this transition is, let's say you get your 2 or 3 paid guys that are manning the station 7 to 7, and you get a call drop and your volunteers show up and your paid guys say, hey, while you guys are here, why don't you wash a truck and push a broom? And like volunteers end up saying, well, why don't you guys do it? You fly a recliner all day. Yeah, so that's my biggest fear, is I've heard so many stories.
That's the problem we have to manage. It's just like he was saying on his department, a lieutenant's a lieutenant, whether they're paid or whether they're not.
Well, we clean up because, it would be real easy, especially at my department where I'm an assistant chief, for me to just get back in my truck and head home while they stay out in the cold and
wash all the hose, but that's, I'm looking for a word here. Chicken something,
Right.
okay?
Well, and I
And-
agree, but that's always been
and-
my fear, is
and-
I hear the stories of all the volunteers getting run off, and you got.
And I don't know where you've heard them, but they're probably apocryphal. I've never heard of volunteers getting run off, ever. Now, there have been some volunteers who were stealing money or, thinking it was their fire department or something like that, who have been run off. But I've never heard of anybody running off a good volunteer. In fact, the only time I've heard of good volunteers being run off is by bad volunteer chiefs. So, I mean, and the bottom line is to answer your question, Jeff, it's a very good question, is the bottom line is, without this ESD, they will not have anybody to go to the fire, because they won't have any way to pay a stipend or pay for a daytime guy, because they won't have that money. And $100,000 is a lot of money, but that's one firefighter. So you just cut your budget in half for everything else.
Imagine if people are there, they can get there a lot quicker than who may be already there, or whose house they live in. We're waiting 2 minutes instead of 14 minutes. Response times should matter in this decision.
Well, and I get that, and my concern is though, if you have two guys that are paid to be at the station all day, do you want 2 guys to show up in 2 minutes, or do you want 12 guys to show up in 8 minutes?
2 guys in 2 minutes, 10 times out of 10.
On medicals?
I'll debate that until I'm blue in the face, because 2 people who are trained, that know what they're doing, I will take those 2 people over 8 or 12, 8 minutes later.
Right, but in 7 minutes, when those 2 guys are spent, then what do?
You keep going to work, that's the way it works.
Well, you got 1 more minute till the next guy show up.
And so really, it's kind of an unwinnable question to answer, but, so 1 guy can do something, 2 guys can do more than no guys for 8 minutes. So they may get it in the incipient stage and knock it out with a water can instead of burning the whole house down or whatever. And that's just part of the growth process. You may have 1 guy.
You adjust your fire tactics with the number of people that you have.
Well, and I'll say this, I actually had, and I won't say what city it is, but in Central Texas, they were against the creation of the ESD. They had a municipal fire department. The captain on that municipal fire department was against it, even though he didn't even live in our district, but he showed up at the public hearing to talk about, well, NFPA says you've got to have 24 people to fight a room and contents fire, which is true. He says, how are you going to do that with just volunteers? Well, the same way we do now, and by the way, the fire department you're on, if you called in everybody on overtime, including your chief and assistant chief, you'd have 7 people there. So you can't even fight what you're talking about right now. So my point is you got to start somewhere. At some point, you got to push the envelope. Whether it's right for Hood County, that's for y'all's citizens to decide if they want this or not. And I'm sorry, Commissioner, you didn't hear this. Everybody else in the room, again, has heard it. I believe these things are the greatest things since sliced bread. They have done a lot of good from the Panhandle to South Texas, east to west. And they're a brilliant grassroots governmental entity. You can talk about whether commissioners are jerks. You can talk about whether firefighters are jerks. You can talk about what you should buy and not what you should buy. That's all personalities. That's all what we all deal with every day anyway, right? And so the bottom line is that you're either for this tax and enhancing and improving the services you have, or you're against it. And I can't argue with you if you don't like the taxes. You need to vote against it. Bottom line. But this is a long-term plan where these folks have determined, and it's up to them to sell it, not y'all, have determined that this is the next step they have to take, which is a natural progression on the route. But they got to sell it. And if they don't, then it's their own responsibility for not selling it.
And Jeff, to speak to your deal, we're not trying to start a paid fire department, but ultimately that's not going to lead. And we could argue it all day, but my opinion is you get the best service. In the end, you get the best service out of the paid fire department. Who's there to respond?
And just so I can be clear and on the record, I'm not against having paid fire departments. In fact, I've talked to the auditor trying to figure out a way, is there a way we can make this happen? We talked about it somewhere up in Denton, somewhere, that they take 2% of the annual county income and put that towards fire protection. Now,
That'd be a good start.
I think at some point they've gotten to where they're able to start paying fire departments and building stations and doing all that kind of stuff. But, you know, we're still, right off the bat, if we started that tomorrow, we're looking at $7.5 million.
2% would be there every single year though, I mean, the ESD money,
Well,
it absolutely has to be spent on fire protection.
Well, I'm not sure.
That's the thing.
Hang on a second,
Benefit.
I'm not sure what we're talking about in Denton County because, and this is subject to debate, but I don't think so. The statute very clearly says counties can pay, they can contract with a municipal fire department, they can buy stuff or contract for stuff or for services with a volunteer fire department, but there's nowhere that says you can do a county fire department. Now, I know I've seen some people with the name county in their names, but there's not a way that the county as a governmental entity can have a fire department.
So, Denton County used to be one that you're talking about?
I hadn't got a chance to meet with the
So
guy.
there are 4 different cities that created their ESD to fund 3 fire stations that are funded 24/7, 365. That's Argyle.
And they got a lot of volunteers, and I'm their attorney, so.
Argyle, Bartonville, Lantana, all those cities came together and said, hey, let's do something better. And that's what they did.
Hey, Mr. Kaufman, before you go, I want to say this on record. The hospital has not given Texas CMS any money since 2017 when they gave them $250,000.
Yeah, I got that information from Ricky too.
All right.
Thank you for that. And sorry for that misinformation.
You said that a county cannot supply a fire department. How does Dallas County have a fire? I see
They
Dallas
don't.
County Fire. I mean,
That's what they call themselves.
where do they get their
There's no
funding?
Dallas County
Where do
Fire.
they get their funding?
They don't, I don't know.
So-
I'm not aware of any Dallas County Fire Department. There's Dallas Fire Rescue. There's a bunch of different Lancaster and whatever else is there. There may be some volunteer fire department that calls themselves Dallas County. Hell, ERAF County. I just drove past ERAF County.
They just
Fire
contract
Department.
with the county. They're just contracts.
Well, see, but Tarrant
You're saying
County,
you can't.
Tarrant County, everything outside of Fort Worth and a few certain cities, they have Tarrant County ESD number 1. And they provide most of the service for most of those incorporated cities, and that little bit of Tarrant County that's not in a city at this point.
But Jeff, I'm curious, what did the county auditor say?
She said we'd have to look at, try to figure out a way to make that happen. She said it would probably still result in a tax increase, but it'd be a tax increase of 2 cents, not a dime.
You threw out a figure of 7-point-something million. What was that in relation to? Just out of curiosity. I didn't quite catch that. There was a lot of conversation going on.
Just trying to figure out what it would take to start a paid fire department.
And the figure was $7.5 million?
Ballpark. And that was just spitballing. That wasn't putting actual numbers and all that together. That was just.
So, there's a department I know of, because I work for one, has 3 stations staffed with 15 people across all 3 stations. 24/7, 365, and we do it for $6 million a year.
Yeah, I was looking at putting that minimum 2 staffing people in to 9 stations.
We ran the numbers years ago in Granbury. It was $3 million.
What does that $3 million get you?
Well, that was going to get an engine, you know, you had an engine company at a station 24/7.
3
Of
guys?
how many?
I want to say it was
4.
It's been a while since.
But we'd have to update our stations to sleeping quarters. We don't have sleeping quarters. We're not equipped for that.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
There's costs
there's a lot of
associated.
NFP upgrades that have to be done.
There's costs associated with it, I understand that, but.
One thing I kind of want to add to all this is that we got to be careful, and this is all of us, comparing Toller to De Cordova.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they may be going after the same goal, to have this ultimate solution to whatever their problems they're addressing through ESD, but boy, they are 2 completely different means, you know, and vice versa. That's going to be one of the harder things for all of us is that we're going to sit here and we're going to try and compare, and I'm going to go real extreme here, Lipan to Granbury. You know, it's like, no, 2 completely different needs and on and on and on. And
But I think that's why our petition was created, is because we identified the needs that we need. Not the needs that Granbury or Taylor or Crescent or anybody else needs, those are our needs.
Well, and I hate to do this, but the commissioners are here to get their questions answered. We've all been over and over and again, and now we're getting into merits and merits of other people's decisions. So y'all can hash that out in another forum. So let's, if the commissioners have anything further.
Yeah, so we've got 9 volunteer fire departments right now, and so would you recommend that we have 9 ESDs?
I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I'm sorry, Commissioner, I don't know enough about your county.
I know about my county, and I would have 4, maybe 5.
And that's
Instead of
Travis?
12, instead of Travis.
What's your population?
I don't know what it is right now. I think it's around 1.2 total in the county. We have our population of what we serve as an ESD is 569,000 according to our estimates.
So have you, in the last 5 years, gone to a county similar to our size and put in a piecemeal ESD in one, like
I have.
5 or, okay, which county would that be?
I'm trying to think, Limestone County is like that. I'm trying to think where I've created an ESD recently, but I have not created a countywide ESD. The first one that I'm working on recently is Hunt County.
Okay, and I've got that. We can talk about that later then.
Right. So the bottom line is that I don't know your county well enough. I'd be glad to come down here and don't have to get paid for it or anything, but sort of work with everybody to come up with a plan, because that's what I was saying earlier in the previous part of the meeting, was that what I don't want to see is somebody who's got nothing but ag use valuation out there and they're all that's left when all's said and done and all the rich areas have been cherry picked and they got nothing, like northeastern Travis County, and they're trying to make it work on a very small. I don't want to see that. I'd rather see everybody's boat get floated a little bit. Do you need a countywide ESD here instead of a piecemeal? I don't know. I haven't looked at it close enough to say that. I don't think so, based on what I understand of kind of where your demographics are and stuff like that. But the bottom line is that a big chunk of it, Granbury's not going to be in it one way or the other. I don't want to speak for them. I don't know if any of them are still here, but I don't think the city itself is going to be in it, because I don't think that's a good idea. But the ETJ does need to be in. So, it depends on how you divide it up. I know Crescent has already denied their consent for their ETJ to be included. I have not heard back as to Granbury and they were going to talk about it this Tuesday, but since Friday they haven't had a chance. They wanted to hear this. And then DeCordova, we're still waiting to hear too. Is that correct, Chief? All right, so
when I came in here this morning, my tact coming in here was just to kind of listen and get everything on the table. I think we should have, one thing I would like to suggest is we have at least 2 more of these, not 3, noticed properly, where we can all be here without wondering if we didn't get the notice out correct. But I want to, what I want to do is review what you've done before we got in here. And, I'd like to, I've got a lot of questions, and probably more than, I don't even know all the questions I've got right this minute. But I know that this is controversial here. I've heard passionate positions on both sides. And I want to, from my seat up here in the Commissioner's Court, I know it'd be easy for us to say, yeah, go ahead and vote one in when we're done with it. So that's certainly an easy way out, but I want to make sure we're doing the correct thing for the taxpayer. So we've got 9 BFDs. You're not recommending that we have 9 ESDs. So I'm just trying to figure out what should we do. And are you available to come up here for a couple more of these?
I am. And we're going to have to look at topography. We're going to have to look at geography. We're going to have to look at roads, because an ESD, just like anything else, is not going to change physics. It's not going to get you across that river. So we have to look at all those kinds of issues, and demographics and tax base, frankly, what the projected tax rate is, because I would not want to leave somebody out that would end up not being able to do anything. We've solved that problem to a large extent in Parker County by ESD1 basically annexing everything as it goes around, and Peaster and the other entity. We do have 3 others over in that western part, and that's fine. And that's historically how they've done it. Whether that's the best idea or not, I don't know, but that's the lay of the land. So I'd be glad to visit with you about it more, and I think I will say 2 things to that. Is one, that's a discussion that everybody here needs to continue to have. The one issue that I see is we've got 2 petitions before this court ultimately, and you're going to have a public hearing on it one way or another between now
and I'm just going to pull this out, but I think August 15th.
Or maybe a little sooner, but yeah. I
Yeah,
agree
you
with
need to have it sooner, because we want to make sure all these consents, we'll let all the cities think about it again, because this is the first time, this is brand new for all of y'all. This is the first time y'all have heard it all, and so we're kind of plowing new ground, so I'm more than happy to help sort through some of the questions and sort of act as a facilitator, although I do represent these people, and you must understand that. But I think...
Who's these people?
DCB Acton. But I'll be glad to help and talk about it, because if there's another way to skin that cat, but what I'm saying is y'all are going to have a public hearing and decide whether to grant or deny the petition at that time, and we probably need to do it sooner rather than later. So with that said, and I'm not trying to put any pressure on you, that's the second thing I want to say, is just that we're in the process now, and so we have to make a decision about November of this upcoming year, but we've got time to sort through that and work through that. I'm just saying that there is a finite time frame on that.
Yeah, we did set a public hearing for May 25th.
Yeah, May
I didn't
25th
know
for
that,
Day
so thank you.
Cordovas, yeah.
So we're, and I think I just heard, is Toller coming in with a petition? Because I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought they'd already done it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought they'd already done it, I apologize.
So, so now we got potentially 2 ESDs out of 9 VFDs. So how do you see that playing? Let's just hypothesize here. And you got an ESD voted in Toller and 1 voted in
De Cordova.
in De Cordova. How do you see that playing out over the long term?
I see it playing out just fine. They always have. I don't know, again, enough about your county, but what I would say is that's going to encourage everybody else to get going. Even if, and just keep this in mind, even if you had a whole county, Hood County ESD 1 that encompassed everything, whether or not Granbury City is included, you still got the same issue of 9 volunteer fire departments, right? So you're still going to have to sort out, how do we, pay these guys to do this? I've had it happen the way I would do it. If I'm sure this is what you do as commissioners, is you got to just figure out who needs the most lifting, right? Where do I need to help? Where do I solve this problem? Whose boat can I float, or can I float everybody's equally, even if it's not enough for some? Because I'm sure you hear, we're the rich part of this county. Why are you spending all that money over there? We're putting in 80% of your tax base. Well, I'm sorry, that's not what my job is as a commissioner. My job is to make sure everybody comes up equal. But the point is, or relatively equal, the point is that you're still going to have 9 different entities out there. Do we divide it up and say, okay, well, and I don't know a name, so I'm just going to say Ken Campbell VFD. You make up 10% of the tax base, so you're going to get 9% of the revenue. 1% is going to go back for the ESD to be an ESD. Is that fair? Is that right? Is that equitable? I don't know. Do they need 2 engines? That's what I'd be considering. So I don't know if having a countywide ESD versus 9 ESDs is going to solve the problem. Some of the VFDs are probably going to have to, at some point, figure out if they need to be separate from each other. And I'll say that very clearly too, because again, if I was to do it in my part of the county of Travis County, where we have Oak Hill, Manchac, Pedernales, Lake Travis, Seabar, and Westlake, that's 6 separate ESDs in that area. If I were having it do again, it would be 1, but I'd call it the Seabar station. The Seabar people are the Seabar people. The Westlake people didn't like them. That's why they didn't include them. Westlake is Westlake. Lake Travis is definitely not Westlake, and I can tell you that because my church used to be called Westlake Bible Church, and we changed the name to Austin Ridge because we couldn't get any Lake Travis people to come there anymore. Okay, because of football. So my point is you're going to have all these issues, whether it's one county or what, but if I had it to do over again, that's how I'd do it, and I'd still call it the Manchac station, or I'd still call it the Pedernales station, or the Spicewood station, whatever, because I don't care. Let's just put the fires out. But you'd be amazed how many people get worked up about that. We are Pedernales, we're not Spicewood. We're Briarcliff, we're not Lago Vista.
So does an ESD, once it gets established, let's just go back to something that's been put in, are all their books, records, finances online, like the county? For instance, we put, so you can go look at all that online, just like
yes, sir,
a county or the city.
Yes, sir, and we have to follow all the same rules. SB2, we don't have elected people in this
case, and we're not elected in mine, but we have to follow the election code rules that say we have to put it up there and what our terms are, even though we're not elected. So yes, we have to follow exact same rules the county does. It's all going to be transparent. I will say this, and I know of plenty of cities and counties that haven't got that done right yet, either SB2 or anything else they're supposed to have on their website or even have a website. But yes, they're supposed to do that.
So who does the accounting? If you
They have to
establish a
hire-
board, who does it?
They have to hire an auditor. That's in the law. They have to have an audit every year unless they meet certain criteria, like they make less than $250,000 and they have no debt. Then they can do what's called a financial compilation, just one under the audit. But everybody has to have an audit. The county auditor can't do it unilaterally, but can if the ESD does not do it, or if the ESD request in the Commissioner's Court approves. I think that's how the statute reads. But they have to have an audit. They're going to have an auditor. They're going to have a lawyer. They're going to have to pay the CAD for the appraisals, and they're going to have to pay the tax assessor collector to collect the taxes. That's the definite hard cost.
And who handles the day-to-day bill paying and accounts and all that?
In my district, the commissioners do. We just recently gave that power to our fire chief, but we still run all the bills by us each month.
And the
And what we're
commissioners
paying.
are the 5 people on the board when you refer to them?
I do it. Our treasurer writes the checks. I mean, so it depends. I've got ESDs that have 15 administrators, I mean, it depends on what you are and what you're doing, but most of them do it themselves. Most of the commissioners do it themselves. I'm the secretary, the treasurer does the treasurer stuff, sometimes we overlap.
And then you just hire an outside auditor to come in once a year to
Yes, sir.
check everything?
Yes, sir. Do an audit that we have to turn into the county by June 1st, unless we ask for an extension, it'd be July 1st. And then if we don't do it by August 15th, the president and the treasurer are automatically resigned from the board.
So do you have any number in the, just kind of off the top of your head is, let's just say out of a 10-cent levy, that how much is that is administrative?
I would say less than 5%. It also depends on the ESD. I mean, if you've got a big ESD with a number of stations and a lot of paid staff, it may be higher. But I mean, out of ours for administration, it's probably about 5%. It may be a little higher when you add in CAD and tax assessor collector and all that stuff. For what it's worth, Commissioner, to be totally forthright, is I tell everybody to just assume 10% is coming off the top for an ESD to be an ESD, whether you have paid staff or not.
And then when you pay...
And I don't think it's going to be, if they get, I don't think it might be 35 for them. It might be 10%, but I don't think it's going to be 80 for them, if that makes sense.
I'm pretty good for now because I've got a lot more studying to do, but I appreciate you coming up here. I mean, if you got anything else...
I think I'm good for now.
Can I give you all my card? And
absolutely, and,
you can
if I
call.
If you get me one of these sometime, I'd appreciate it.
I'll send 5 more. That's all I could find last night. So I could only find 4. So I'll send some more to you.
Okay.
Is it all right if I send them to the judge and he just retrieve them out, or you want me to send them to you individually?
It doesn't make any difference. Whatever's easiest for you,
Okay.
as long as I can get a copy. Okay, thanks. Anybody else have something?
You want to try to plan another workshop, say mid-March?
I would say so. Since everybody's here, look at your calendar.
Ken, if you can find a time that works for you, and I'll...
I will look. I'm sorry I don't have my calendar with me. I don't have a way to access it right now.
I was gonna say, we keep rescheduling this, but I realize stuff and events. I was unemployed for 11 months and took a day off work to be here. Is there any way we could maybe be a little accommodating to everyone that's...
Oh, that's why it got moved 3 times, was to accommodate.
I realize that, but
So what do you suggest?
Fridays or an evening? I mean, obviously, we need to work around Steve Cordova and Toller's schedule.
Well, and keep
That's
in mind,
really
Mr.
what it
Campbell's
needs
coming
to
from
be.
Austin.
Do what?
Mr. Campbell's coming from Austin.
Let's do it on a Friday out at the brewery south of Culver.
I don't know if we're gonna get much done there, Matt.
Well, we'll pass around some, we'll try to figure out some dates toward then. You know, I'd like to do one or two more of these, myself. I think that my goal as a commissioner up here is to get all the facts, both sides of the argument on the table, and we can take it from there. We've got our first hearing on De Cordova's petition on May the 25th, and it sounds like Toller's going to roll in with one sometime in the near future. So, it gives us 90 days to formulate our opinions up here, but it also gives us 90 days to hopefully educate people, because the thing that I'm wary of is just a lot of issues that go for referendums, and they only hear one side of the story, the taxpayer. And I want to make sure that both sides of the argument are out on the table. And then, like I say, if it turns out going to a vote or to a ballot, then as long as the taxpayer's got both sides of the issue, then that's all we can do.
Well, if you're against taxes, you're against this.
Yeah, well, I'm against taxes, but sometimes you gotta.
Right. Got to make the compromise.
You know, the county has certain things we're supposed to do, and roads, bridges, infrastructure, sheriff's department, courts, county clerks, records, and there are certain things we ought not be doing.
You've got a lot of unfunded mandates on top of that, but you got to do what you got to do with the money you got to do it at. But again, I hate to put it that bluntly, but if you don't want another tax, and you don't believe that it's going to enhance you, then, and I don't mean you personally, I mean the voters.
Well, whatever happens about funding it, either way it gets funded, it's going to come out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And
y'all
no
have done
matter
an exceptional
what
job.
name you put on it or which department it comes out of, it's still coming out of their pocket.
And y'all have done an exceptional job with what you've got so far. You truly have.
Well, I'm good myself.
Anybody else? All right.
We'll call it a day. I appreciate you coming up.
Thank y'all. I'll bring you my card if that's okay.
All right, thank you.